Hey, what's up? It's Cute What If this side. Today we will be seeing, what if Deku got harem with superhero girls? Now before we move ahead with the fic, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for future what ifs like this. It had been a week since the Star Sapphire incident and we find ourselves back at Metropolis High with the foot field restored back to its glory. Karen was seen walking on the track to school as she was busy texting Barbara on her phone about something that the two had been working on for the past 2 weeks since they first met, and were excited about showing it to the others. She was so indulged in the text that she wasn't aware that something was heading towards her head fast. She gets hit in the side of her head by a foot, forcing her to fall to the ground. As Karen rubs the spot where her head was hit, 2 shadows loom over her. Hey, Beeser. Karen stops her rubbing and looks up to the shadows. She sees 2 girls, both of them who look to be a few years older than she was. One of the girls had a very bulky figure, with noticeably big legs and arms. She had large red hair, tied up into a big ponytail, and was wearing a yellow tracksuit with pockets on the chest and thighs, as well as white sneakers. The other girl was skinnier than her friend was. She had short black hair with blue highlights on one side of her head, brown eyes, light pale skin, and wore a black choker on her neck. A full gray-blue bodysuit underneath with a black jacket with diamonds over the bodysuit, along with a short black ripped skirt with 2 diamonds on the skirt. She also wore blue and black boots and has gray piercings. Heads up. The bulky girl warns as she and the other girl laugh at Karen for the hit and fall. Hi Doris. Fancy meeting you here while I was taking the longer way to chemistry class, Karen says as she looks down, knowing that she had to deal with this now of all days. The bulky girl, now revealed as Doris, crosses her arms over her chest and smirks. Hey, I went to chemistry class once, before I realized it was for nerds and science freaks and I ditched it. So, I know where it is, Doris says as she looks at Karen and sadly gains an idea. But, tell you what, why don't we just SCRT you there? Doris asks while looking at her friend who smirks, getting what she was really saying. Karen on the other hand was getting nervous about Doris's suggestion. And no, it's fine. Really, I can get myself with no problem. So, you really don't have to do that, Karen says as she tries to get up and walk away, but Doris grabs her sweater and pulls her back to them. Oh no, we insist. You'll never know who's in the halls, Doris says as she and her friend grab Karen by her arms and start dragging her to the locker room. Ooh, you guys, this isn't actually the science building. This isn't the Smarty building, Doris says in a poor attempt to imitate Karen. She looks back down and narrows her eyes at the short, younger African American. See that, Beecher? That's the problem you have. You irritate me, you bug me. You're a tiny little insect that's always around me, annoying me, Doris says as she steps in front of Karen, causing her to back up to the row of lockers beside her. And you know what Doris does to bugs that annoy her? She squashes them, the other bully says as Doris smirks. Yeah, and I think it's time you learn that you shouldn't ever irritate me, Doris says as she grabs Karen by her wrists and starts using her hands to make Karen hit herself in the face. Why are you hitting yourself? Why you hitting yourself? Why you hitting yourself? Doris chants as Karen just took the hits rather easily, since they weren't even that strong hits in the first place. Oh okay Doris, very funny, Karen says, but the other bully wasn't as assumed as her. You think that's funny? Maybe you need a little time to yourself to think how comedy really works, the other bully says as Doris stops what she was doing and opens the looker right next to Karen. Yeah, get in there and think about how comedy works, Doris yells, although she hesitantly in the middle and repeating what her friend said. She was about to grab Karen to shove her into the locker, but Karen stops her. Wait, I can do it myself, Karen says, defeated as she walks into the locker and looks at the 2 bullies. Smell you later, Beecher, Doris yells as she slams the door shut and she and her friend walk out of the locker room, leaving the poor girl in her prison with no way out. And then I was found by the foot team came in to change into her PE clothes and Hal opened the locker, which turned out to be his, and he frees me. I then had to go out of the locker room with my eyes closed since most of the boys were not in their shirts or breathe yet. And I don't want to tell you how many times I had to ask where I was going to get to the door. And I missed my class again because of this, Karen shouts, telling her escape story to Barbara, who was munching on an apple, and Izuku. The 3 were heading to the junkyard for some after-school training. That's the 5th time this month that Doris shoved me into a locker. I just don't get it. The 5th time of what, Karen said? Izuku asks, not really getting the context of her story. Oh, she's getting bullied at school by a repeat student named Doris, Babs answers as she takes another bite of her apple. She and Karen don't notice Izuku stopping momentarily as he hears this before he snaps out of what was said and resumes walking next to them. Wait, you're getting bullied, Izuku asks, briefly hesitating on his words. Yeah, I am. And I don't know what I did to her to make her bully me, Karen says as Barbara takes another bite of her apple before speaking. Oh, it's quite common really. You see, most people our age tend to get physically, mentally, and emotionally abused by someone for a number of reasons. Most do it either to show power and DMNC at school, to establish themselves as one of the top dogs at school. Some do it for popularity as it rules to them that they have to bully those they think are inferior to them, and among other reasons. Others do it as some form of payback for something you did to them in the past. Some do it as some form of an outlet from their problems at home, or do it as a new yet twisted form of pleasure and entertainment. Lesser-known cases linko prejudice as those who are ruled under that have beliefs which mostly just make them target the victims for various reasons such as race, religion, gender identity, and sexual orientation, and finally, and most common one in this is peer pressure. In most cases, 4 out of the 7 I mentioned tending to profile the bullier as they always target those they think are small and weak in the food chain. Babs says as her words caused Izuku to flinch and stop while Karen just stops and glares at Babs, who now realizes what she said, and may have offended Karen. She turns around and sees the glare. Sorry, I meant, the small and awesome, Babs says as she nervously chuckles. She then notices Izuku was looking into space as he was out of it. Hey Izuku, are you okay? Babs asks as Karen turns and sees Izuku state. The greenlet shakes his head and looks around and sees Babs and Karen were looking at him. Why yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking about something for later. Hey haha. Izuku nervously laughs while rubbing the back of his head. Karen sighs as they resume walking. Look Babs, you might think being small is fun, but trust me, it's not. It makes you more vulnerable to others and makes you invisible to the world. It's being small, Karen says while looking down to the sidewalk, unaware that Izuku was looking at her with rather a familiar expression. But really Karen couldn't go to a teacher and report this. Barbara asks as Karen just shakes her head. I've already tired. The PE teacher loves her since Doris is the school's girls' foot team captain, which makes her untouchable. The only way she could get into trouble is if she was failing a class and getting kicked out of the team. The only way I can really get her to stop bullying me is by being bigger than her, and after today, I think I can do that with ease. Karen says as she tugs onto her backpack, which Izuku knew what she was thinking about. Karen, I know that you want to get back at her, but trust me, it won't end well at all, especially if you use your suit. It would just make you behave just like her. The best thing for you to make her stop is to try and be better than her, not to get to her level, just by being yourself and standing up to her. As you, Izuku says. Karen looks at him and felt that he was right, but there was still doubt in her mind about what would happen if she does that. Okay, Karen says, not sounding too confident. Great, now come on. We got to get to the junkyard if we want to show the others your new and improved armor. Babs yells as she grabs Izuku's and Karen's wrists, and starts to drag them to the junkyard quicker, somewhere else in the city. In one of the suburbs of Metropolis at a 2-story house, Doris was seen, in her garage, doing her afternoon workout, which was involving her doing a bench press set with a few weights. Next to her on a box were a white water bottle and her laptop, and she was currently having a Skype call with her friend from earlier while rock music was playing in the background. You need some new material, Doris. Why not change? Why are you hitting yourself? To quit hitting yourself, dweeb. The friend says as she laughs a bit. The two were discussing their bullying tactics and coming up with new ways to torment Karen. Doris scoffs at the suggestion. Whatever, it's a classic and works every time. Doris says as she tries to do one more rep, but she was starting to struggle from the weights as her arms were shaking as she tries to get the weight set onto the bench's bar catchers, but the bar slips out of her hands, causing the heavy equipment to land on her midsection, which causes the bench to break. Wow, a meathead falling on her, but after she couldn't do her last rep. Now that's classic. Leslie laughs at the irony of Doris's accident. Doris sits up and glares at the screen while her cheeks had small dust of pink. Shut it, Leslie. Doris yells as she slams her laptop shut, ending the call. She then notices 2 people in lab coats were standing in front of her, both wearing large frame glasses and both looked a bit how do I say this nicely? Nerdy. They were Mr. and Mrs. Zuel, Doris's parents. Ever heard of knocking dweebs? Doris asks in a rude tone. Sweetie, Daddy and I are leaving now for the annual science conference. Okay, Mrs. says while adjusting her glasses. Doris, on the other hand, simply rolls her eyes. Fine, whatever. Not like I care for your nerd fests. Doris, have fun with your sporting activities, sweetie. Love you. Doris's mother says as she and her husband walk over to their car and drive off. Doris, who really didn't care about their stupid plans, looks back to the broke equipment and thought what happened that caused her to struggle like that since it's never happened before. She flexes her bicep and notices that it wasn't growing at all. In fact, her biceps looked smaller in comparison to how it was last week. Man, I seriously gotta pump back up. But how? Doris asks as she starts to think. She knew that working out was out of the option since it would take time and she wanted results fast. She looks around and notices that her parents' lab door was unlocked, and she smirks as an idea pops into her mind. She goes into the lab and looks around for something that could help speed her muscle growth faster. She walks around a bit until she spots something at the back of the room and sees a row of 4 sealed test tubes, containing an orange liquid in each one. Doris takes one of the tubes and picks up one of her parents' jet injectors from a shelf right before placing the test tube into the slot of the injector, and screws the tube in tightly, and sees the liquid flow into the gun. Yeah, this will seriously make me diesel in no time, Doris says as she points the injector into her left arm and pulls the trigger, making the liquid shoot right into her BLD vines. Totally unaware that the liquid started to glow and that it was flowing throughout her body at an alarming rate as she grins and leaves the room. Metropolis Junkyard. Young Justice were at their hidden spot in the city junkyard, busy training and coming up with some new moves. Izuku and Diana were busily sparring in hand-to-hand combat. Well, more like Diana trying to teach Izuku her fighting style since she noticed him doing some moves involving his legs which were powerful, but looked stiff while doing so, and when he just fights with his hands, it looked like he was just punching instead for actually attacking an opponent. Kara was at the side, busy punching a block of cement in one concentrated area. This was helping her learn to control her strength, and learn what amount of her strength should she put into her attacks. Z was busy at the other side, reading one of her books, learning new spells in case a situation called for one of them, and Jessica was in the air, floating as she was busy making a rage of light constructs. After her encounter with Star Sapphire, Jess learned that Star was faster and more creative than her in terms of making light construct, and she was in need of training herself to improve her speed. As they were still doing their training, Barbara walks toward them in her costume. Hey, guys, can you come over here? I got to show you all something cool, Babs says as the others stop doing what they were doing to turn to her. What is it, Barbara Gordon? Diana asks. Just something really cool. Come on, Babs yells as she leads them to a wall of stacked cars as she clears her throat. Now, ladies and Izuku. Introducing the new and improved Bumblebee. Barbara yells as she then starts to mock a trumpet as Karen shyly walks out from the cars, now wearing her new and improved version of her suit. It was now a custom-made Bumblebee-like battle armor with yellow and brown parts, and she had a Sir version of her helmet which now included a green visor. The suit also had blue wings and was Sir and firm than the previous design. So, what do you think about my new battle armor? Karen asks as the others start clapping. Karen, that suit looks divine, Z says as she claps her hands together, impressed by the suit's design, given how its predecessor looked. Yeah, you look awesome, Jess says with a smile. That armor is befitting that of a true Amazon warrior. Diana says, proudly. Looking good, kid. Kara says with her thumb up. That suit looks amazing, Karen-san. It really brings out your creative side. Izuku says as he slides his mask and mouthguard off to show off his bright smile. Karen blushes at the praises she was receiving and felt proud of her achievement. Thank you guys, Karen says while rubbing her arm. So, what does this new gear do? Kara asks as Karen looks down at the suit. Well, we added those thin-filmed full-tape modules that I got from home. They add a more reinforced armor to what I previously had and are solar panels which act as the suit's main power source. Karen explains with the suit changing color schemes for a brief moment, and they look like the stripes of a bee. Barbara yells, jumping in place as Karen clears her throat as she turns around to show off the new wings. I modified and changed the material of the wings. They're now carbon fiber and they add a duller tone to the buzzing noise. I would have taken the buzzing away, but I kind of like the buzzing now, Karen says as the wings start to flap, causing a low-tone buzz as they do so. Just like a bee, Babs yells as Karen just rolls her eyes. And we're working on quartz prisms in my gauntlets that will fire electrified stingers from them, Karen says as one of her gauntlets transforms into a stinger which gives off a little electric pulse, like how a cute little bee would sting someone. Barbara says as Karen gave her a dry look before turning to the others. And I fixed the one big issue I've been having, which leads me to the biggest upgrade yet. My growth tech, Karen declares as Barbara couldn't hold it in anymore as she starts to do a poor imitation of a drum roll as everyone watched on with interest in what could be a big change to the team's dynamic. Okay, here goes, Karen thought as she opens up her gauntlet's control panel and presses a button flies up and started to give off a soft golden glow as she starts to grow in size. Everyone was excited on this new development. Up until Karen suddenly stopped growing, and instead shrunk down to the size of a bee, as she could do originally. Everyone was shocked at this and couldn't think of what to say next. Nice one, Karen, Jess says as she was thinking about telling the African-American girl the truth, but someone beat her to it. Yeah, you shrunk differently, Kara says. When Karen hears her, she opens her eyes and sees that the world was bigger than her and looks at herself, seeing that she shrunk down to what she was. Oh come on, I thought we finally fixed the growth tech, Karen shouts in frustration as she flies down and lands on Z's index finger as she and the others look down at her with concern. If it makes you feel any better, you're so cute when you're small, Z says in an attempt to cheer the short girl up. But I don't want to be cute. I want to be big, strong, and intimidating like you guys. How am I going to do that when? Karen says as she flies off Z's finger and returns back to her original size. I'm just small as a bug, Karen sighs while taking off her helmet. Babs then walks up to her and pats her back. It's okay. I think we messed up with we inverted the zeta thingy when we had to crosswire that other thingy cause we ran out of those thingies. All we have to do now is just go and find the one thingy that we need and pitch it into the motherboard, and I bet that'll solve this, no problem. Babs says as she was trying to comfort her friend. Yeah, maybe that's the issue. If we can fix that, then I'm sure I can grow to be big. Karen says as she starts to feel a bit better. Then it is settled. Let us procure the correct thingies. Diana says as she walks up to that duo and places her hand onto Karen's shoulder. A quick trip to the electronics store at the mall and we'll have the whole thing sorted out. Barbara says as Izuku walks up to them. I'll come with you guys. It'll help us better and fast if we go as a group and fix your problem. Izuku says with Karen's cheeks having a small pink dust on them. Z stands up from her seat. Well, as much as I hate to miss a trip to the mall, I can't come with you guys. My dad and I have a show later tonight. Z says as she snaps her fingers and changes from her hero outfit to her normal attire. And I am going to the show to protest on them using animals in their acts. Jess says as she changes back to her normal attire. Oh cool. We can share a cab on the way there. Z says to Jess, who nods before turning to Karen. Hey, I know you'll find what you're looking for, Karen. Jess says to Karen with a smile, which the girl returns. And what about you, Kara? Izuku asks the Kryptonian, who just thinks on the idea for a bit before shrugging her shoulders. Guess it wouldn't hurt coming along since I got nothing better to do. Kara says as she gets up and the group went their separate ways. The journey to the mall was a rather calm one for once for our young heroes. As they arrive at the mall, Izuku was in awe of the place. Sure, he has been to shopping centers back home plenty of times with his mother growing up, and recently one of those trips nearly ended in him getting killed by a villain, but he was surprised at how many stores can fix in one place. As they scale by the escalator with Diana being on one for the first time, they reach the top floor of the mall, hoping that the store they were looking for was there. Diana was in front of the group, holding onto the escalator's railing. I survived the mechanical staircase. Diana cheers while the others just smile or chuckle at her optimism. Babs looks around and spots something that causes her to gasp while accidentally causing Diana to jump and shift into her fighting stance, thinking that they were under attack. Gosh, the new Gotham Glory line of cowls is out. How did I not find out about this? I'll catch up with you guys. I've so got to buy those. Barbara yells as she jets straight to the store that was having the sale. Okay, while you go and do your nerd stuff, I'll be going to the food court and getting me some chili fries. Call me when you're done. Kara says as she places her headphones onto her ears and walks away to the food court. Lead on, young Karen, let us do our nerd stuff. Diana says, placing her hand on Karen's back in the short guide The Amazon Princess and the Japanese exchange student to the electronics store. They pass by a store that sold sports gear, unaware of what was happening in said store. The trio arrive at the store, they enter it and see that it was filled with all types of electronic items, old and new. Being this was her first time in such a place like this, Diana was in awe at the sight as she aimlessly walks around the store and looks at one thing to the next that caught her childlike attention. Izuku too was walking around the store, seeing items that he'd mostly seen back in Japan. But here in the States, they were different to the how he knew. He continues to look around until he spots Karen paying for something that he assumes that it was what she was looking for. Did you find what you're looking for, Karen-san? Izuku asks as he goes over to her and Karen turns to him and nods. Yeah, and with this, my tech won't burn out and I can finally grow. Karen says as she holds out a circuit board in her hand, which causes him to frown a little. While he had no problem with people growing to giant sizes, considering that he's met someone with the power to grow to a giant at will back in Japan, what he did have a problem with was what was messing with Karen to make her do this, and he had a clear idea on what it could be. Karen, I know this isn't my business and I have no problem with your goal of being bigger than where you are, but why do you want to grow big quickly? Izuku, biting the bullet and asks, causing the girl to stop for a moment before she turns to him. I just so sick and tired of being picked on just because of my small size. Everyone I've met in my life has made fun of my shy nature and size. And I can't do anything about it since I'm too shy to stop it or too scared to stop them. I'm just tired of it all. Karen says as she looks down to the floor with her hair shadowing her eyes while tears were beginning to form in the corner of her eyes. Izuku looks at her and couldn't help but see himself in her his old self. The one who was the scared, shy, quirkless kid who lived up until a year ago. Karen, I'm so sorry that you feel like this, but I know how you feel. Izuku says as Karen softly scoffs a little. No offense, Izuku, but it's not like you know what I'm feeling right now. Karen says as Izuku just looks at her as his eyes go dull a bit. Actually, I do. I know exactly how it is. I'm probably the only one in our team that knows what you're going through, but I've experienced worse much worse, Izuku says, causing Karen to look up at him with a confused expression. You do? Karen asks as Izuku nods. I know how it feels to be different from everyone else, being called names like worthless, a bug, stalker, nerd, BSDRD, freak, loser, etc. I know how it feels to be beaten by 3 to 5 of your classmates every day when they use their powers on you and know you can't even defend yourself from their assault. For 10 years and 10 months, I've seen the worst of what modern Japan's society is just for being different from everyone else, and I learned a strong lesson when I was just 4. That men aren't born equally, Izuku says as Karen looks at him with a look of disbelief. Why did you think like that? Karen asks. Izuku looks down at her. Back home in Japan, quirks or metagenes as you know them are the thing there. 80% of the population there do have a quirk, metagene, granting them sorts of different or similar powers. The society there is that if you're born with a powerful ability, you're in the special class if you've got a power that is good enough. You're okay, but if you're born with a power that they consider a villainous power, a worthless power, or just being born without any powers, then you're the scum to the earth in their eyes. People treat you differently from the other when you fall under the last two. People who get called villains for their quirk tend to go the villain way due to the discrimination they've faced growing up or for other reasons, most linking to their family, either abusing them or neglecting them, which leads them to go out and join villains since to them they are the real heroes in their lives as they were the ones to understand them the best than their family. As for those who are born without a power, they live lives that are filled with pain, suffering, and loneliness. That is if they do live that long. Izuku says as he suddenly has energy drain. What do you mean by that? Karen asks as Izuku sighs. He really didn't want to do this to her, considering if she couldn't handle what he was about to say, but he felt that she should know. No. She had to know. Not of everyone in their team, he believed that she should be the first to know. Because due to Japan's society's view on the quirkless or the normal, people who fall under that class commit suicide at the average age of 14 every year, and the people who drove them to do it, they don't care about what they hear about it. They feel no remorse about them driving an innocent person and killing themselves. The number of the quirkulous, normal in Japan was around 20% of the population, but that number is getting smaller and smaller than what it was over 100 years. I think that in a decade or so, there won't be any normal people in Japan anymore if things don't change soon. Izuku says as Karen's eyes widen in utter shock and horror at what he said with her hands going to her mouth. Oh my god. All those people. Just because they were born without a special power. Karen says she knew that metahumans in the States were looked or viewed differently due to their special abilities, and at most times are discriminated against for their difference, but hearing that another country's view on their metas, and their normal citizens, it horrified her. That's the reality we live in, Karen-san. If you're on the top of the food chain or the strongest, this world is going to chew you up and spit you out, leaving you dead in some alleyway for the rats, and no one will help you cause if it doesn't involve them. Why bother? Izuku says. How do you know all this? Karen asks as Izuku was dreading that question, but he had to answer, even if he didn't want to. I know all this because I did my research on the quirkless. I know all this because I've not only seen this happen, but I've experienced it. I know this because I was misdiagnosed as quirkless and I was later told to go kill myself to pray in getting a quirk in my next life by someone from past. And that my former bully, his name is Katsuki Bakugo. He and I grew up and went to the same schools together, from kindergarten to high school. He is was my friend growing up, and at first, he was nice, arrogant, and rude, but was a nice and kind kid growing up. Until the day he got his power and he changed into the worst version of himself. While he remained rude and arrogant, he went around, bragging that he was the strongest and that he was the next future #1 hero in Japan. Never did he bother in learning any names for our old classmates when we were in the same classes, as he went around beating anyone he thought in his twisted mindset, a worthless extra. He did go beat up a few kids throughout the years with his quirk, but there was always one person he'd go to and just utter beat the living hell out of him. And that was me. At the time, my quirk, meta power, was dormant as my body at the time was too weak to handle it. And if I used it then, I would have died from the backlash. Day in and day out, he beat, burned, and tormented me for nearly long years. To him, I was a bug in his path to his so-called origin, and I annoyed him daily even when I didn't even speak or provoke him. He was and still is a bully and DCK, and the worst thing is that it took me 11 years to finally stand up to him and beat him up. And I did it as a last resort since he challenged me to a fight after I got my DMN license on the first try and he failed his. Izuku yells as he punches the wall beside him, startling Karen. He turns to her and sees her frightened expression. He sighs and runs his scarred hand through his hair before turning to her and placing his hands on her shoulders as he stares into the eyes of his African-American friend. Karen, I talk from experience, that if you do go and make yourself grow and go and beat up your bully, it's not going to make you feel better, it's just going to make you feel empty inside. That is the one thing you've been dreaming of, but it'll feel you unsatisfied. It's just that it took me almost 11 years to finally stand up to my bully and beat him up just to tell him that I'm done with him. Trust me, I can speak since I did it and I felt like CRP afterward. My hero name, Deku, was a nickname I got from my former bully as a taunt that means worthless Izuku. But I met someone back home who told me it could mean, you can do it. After that, I changed the meaning of Deku from worthless to you can do it. I did it to show that I can't let my past haunt me anymore and show that I can grow into a hero that can smile in the face of danger to protect the people. To prove to all those in my past that I'd never amount to anything in life, that I am worth something. Izuku. Karen utters quietly and sadly, not knowing what to do or say after hearing about Izuku's past bully, and his experiences. Suddenly, they hear a loud bang, right before hearing a man scream as they turn to the outside window of the store and see a bench weight-lifting set embedded into the concrete, right before a large man was seen flying past the store. They run out of the store, look around to see where was all this commotion coming from. What's going on? Izuku asks. I don't know, Karen says. Great hero. They turn around and see Diana had exited the electronics store and was with them. What is the cause of mayhem? She asks. Puny man. The trio turn behind them and see that inside the sports store, someone was coming out of it, the dust within. And out came a hulking female figure. The figure had long red hair that hung halfway down her back. She wore a two-piece yellow loincloth with brown bracelets on each wrist and ankle. She is also barefoot. How dare you insult? Giganta. This figure, now known as Giganta, roars, causing vibrations to rock the floor as she holds up a basket goal post in her hands. Now all shall feel my wrath. Giganta shouts as she breaks the basket post with her knee and throws it across the hall, right at the citizens there. Just before it could hit the citizens, a hand catches the weapon with ease. It was Diana in her Wonder Woman outfit. Citizens, clear the area, we shall face off with this brute. Come sister and Zeus's champion. To battle. Diana yells as she discards the broken sports equipment. But my suit. It still needs that part, Karen was trying to say to Diana, but the Amazon princess wasn't listening to her as her warrior drive took over and she engages in battle to be in it to work. Karen says with a swear drop forming on her back. Okay Karen, go back to the store and install that part into your suit and see if it's working now. Izuku, what are you going to do? Karen asks as Izuku doesn't answer immediately but instead goes to his backpack and pulls out his hero outfit suitcase. I'm gonna go help Diana out to buy some time. Hopefully, Kara and Babara hear this and comes over to help. Izuku says as he opens his suitcase and starts taking his hoodie and t-shirt off, unaware that Karen was still there and was watching him undress. Diana was in the air and charging towards Giganta, who just stood in place as the Amazon warrior delivers a heavy punch onto the giant girl's face, causing a shockwave to blow the area but only to have her reel back a bit in pain as she felt the recoil of her punch. By Zeus's white beard. What are you made of? Diana asks while still in RSNG her hand. Pure and strong muscles. Giganta claims as she swats her hand at Diana, causing the Amazon to fly back. Suddenly, she was grabbed by Deku as he lands back on the ground with his feet digging into the ground until he came to a halt. Are you okay, Wonder Woman? Deku asks as Wonder Woman nods and gets off Deku's arms. Yes, I am alright. But we appear to have a problem. Giganta is durable. She was able to withstand my punch just moments ago and appeared to not have felt it at all. Wonder Woman says as she stops an RSNG her hand and looks at it to see it had a bruise forming. Meaning that going into a head-on fight won't work. Which means we have to fight long range and try to outsmart her. Deku says as full cowling starts to surge around his body. Correct. Wonder Woman says as she stood up but she notices something where his sister Bumblebee. I told her to remain in the electronics store and repair her suit. If she can get it to work, then we might have a chance in defeating Giganta. Deku answers with Wonder Woman's understanding. Okay, then let us try in stopping this villain until help arrives. Wonder Woman says as Deku nods. The two then turn to Giganta, who just smirks and cracks her knuckles. Please hurry, little Bumblebee. Diana thought. Hope you can get it working, Karen. Izuku thought. The two heroes nod to each other and then change towards the large villain. They throw two heavy kicks which Giganta blocks with her arms as another shockwave rocks them all, but the combined force of their kicks did have a result as Giganta found herself getting pushed back a few feet right before she flexes her arms, forcing the heroes to fly back. The two heroes roll on the ground before flipping a bit and landing on their feet. They look up and see that the hulking girl had a dumbbell in her hand as she takes one part of the eights off one side and puts them on the other side and uses it as a makeshift club. Diana looks on the ground for a weapon before she finds a hockey stick, picks it up and spins it around before slipping into a combat bow fighting style, while Izuku just fixes his gloves dual layered bands as the outer layer jolts forward before retracting back down. Moments pass before they charge at Giganta again with the villain doing the same. They meet halfway as Giganta swings her club at them, but the duo dodges as Deku jumps over her while Diana just jumps back from the club as it slams into the floor. Giganta continues to try and strike Diana, but the Amazon continues to avoid as the club was leaving mini craters with each strike its user through. Diana jumps at her and attempts to strike the hulking girl with her hockey stick, but Giganta was quick and swung her club at the warrior, who saw the club coming and used the hockey stick to dodge the hit, but the hockey stick broke on impact, and Diana was to hit as she was sent back flying, hit a wall behind her. As Giganta started going to her, she was shot in the back but something and she felt pain from it. She turns around and saw Deku with his wristband open as he fires another Delaware Smash, Air Force at her, hitting her square in the face as she stumbles back a bit. She shakes her head and as soon as she looked back at Deku, she saw red. Grrr. Giganta growls as she charges toward Deku. She leaps into the air and throws a punch at him, but he jumps away from the punch with her, leaving a big crater on the floor. Deku runs around her and starts to shoot a barrage of air cannons at the giant, who just tanks most of them while changing at the hero. Giganta tanks one more air cannon as she swings a punch at Deku, who was unable to block or dodge due to that he was about to F all 5 fingers at her. He gets flung back and goes through a wall. Giganta was about to hit Deku again when suddenly a glowing golden rope wrapped around her swing wrist, stopping her. She turns around and sees Diana holding the other end of the rope. You may be a formidable opponent, but let us see how you handle the lasso of truth, Diana says, with the lasso glowing ever brighter as Giganta started to feel its effect as the two were playing a game of tug-o-war. What is your reason for causing such mayhem? Diana asks as Giganta tries to fight back against the lasso's influence, but it was no use. I only came here to buy some new heavier weight to work out with, but that jerk at the store thought I was weak and needed lighter weights. Do I look like I need light weights? I'm perfectly fine with how I am, but I want to make myself better. To be perfect, but that jerk was trying to ruin that. I don't need that or I'll never be good to anyone. Giganta says the truth that was in her mind. Diana don't say a thing as she wasn't expecting that to come out. Giganta sees Diana's moment state of confusion and took it to opportunity, as she pulls her in and uses the lasso to tie Diana up and spins her until letting go and throwing Diana through 6 walls. The hulking villain laughs for a bit when, "Hey meat brain." She hears some yelling at her as she turns to the source and sees Kara in her hero outfit flying straight to her. Over here, Supergirl yells with her, delivering a barrage of punches onto Giganta's face, pushing her back with each landing blow. Kara lands one big uppercut onto Giganta's chin as the taller girl falls to her knees and rubs her chin. Despite her durability, she felt each one of those punches. Supergirl went for another punch when Giganta caught her fist and throws her off guard. She then throws Kara away but grabs her leg and starts to swing her around in the air until she smashes the Kryptonian into the floor face first, and then slams her back and repeats this action several times until slamming the blonde one last time. The blonde Kryptonian groans a bit as she shoots back on her feet as she was covered in bruises while her outfit had tears in some places. Is that all you got? Kara asks, not ready to give up yet, as she throws a punch to Giganta's stomach and lands it as the giant coughs up spit from the blow. She grabs Kara's arm and before Kryptonian could pull away, she starts to spin Kara again, but this time at a higher speed until letting her go, sending the Kryptonian flying out of the mall and into space. Giganta laughs again at a goof well done right before feeling something land by her feet. She looks down and sees a grenade was there, with its pin out right before blowing up, consuming her in a fire. Bombs away. Batgirl yells, jumping from the upper level as she sees that her plan worked. As the smoke cleared away, she saw Giganta was still standing, but she now sported a few burn marks, bruises, and scratches, but she was fine. Hello. Batgirl utters as she dodges a punch as she lands behind the giant. Her pulls out one of her batarangs and throws it to the giant, with catches it with ease, thinking it wasn't going to hurt her at all. But that wasn't Batgirl's plan. The batarang explodes and releases a built-in net that wraps around her. Yes. Batgirl cheers, but Giganta cuts her off by simply flexing her muscles and breaks out of the net easily. Timeout. Batgirl asks, but the giant didn't listen as she picks Batgirl up and simply tosses her into a storefront. Giganta looks around and saw no one was left to stop her from destroying that store. 20% Detroit. She hears someone speak and turns to see who it was, to see Deku in the air above her with his fist raised. Smash. Deku yells, striking his punch onto Gianta's face, making her fall back and smash into a wall. Forgot about me? Deku asks as he was breathe. Exhausted and most likely feeling some pain from his last encounter with her, Deku still wanted to fight to beat her before any more damage was made. Giganta stood up and rubs her cheek where Izuku punched as she wipes her mouth and saw BLD coming out. She looks at him and grins. Not bad, little bunny man. You made me bleed, but do you really think you can beat me? Giganta asks, unaware that Izuku's eye twitched when she said something. Why is everyone calling me a bunny? I'm not a freaking bunny, Izuku thought, getting tired of people calling him that, but he had other things to worry about right now. I don't know, but I'll try, Deku says as full cowling activates as he changes to her. Giganta went for a punch once he got into range, but Izuku leaps into the air and dodges the punch with him, sending a kick to Giganta's face, making her reel back from the kick once it landed. Izuku lands on his feet just under the giant, but he leaps backward. He saw Giganta trying to stomp on him. Once he had enough distance from her, Deku lifts his hand up and starts sending air cannons to her again, but Giganta saw them coming and used a sign from a store as a shield and throws it at him with him dodging it. As he was about to turn back to Giganta, she was already there, waiting for him. Okay, enough games. I've something special for you, little bunny man, Giganta says as she pulls Izuku onto her with his face on her large breasts, which causes him to blush, but that soon changes when she starts to give him a big bear hug, but to him, it felt like was getting crushed by a press. Deku screams from the pain he was feeling as Giganta continues to squeeze the life out of Deku until someone shot a blast of yellow electricity at her head, causing her to get stung and releasing Izuku, who just falls to the ground and couldn't get up due to the pain. As Giganta shook the shock off, she hears another person yell behind her. She and Deku turn to see Karen in her new suit, but it took Giganta a few seconds longer than Izuku to find Karen, and when she did find her, she was shaking like a leaf. Giganta sees this and laughs. Here haha. Oh, and what are you going to do, little bee? Giganta asks as Karen just shakes in fear, but once she started to look around and the damage and her friends in their condition, Karen gulps down her fear and starts to get serious. I'm gonna even the playing field. Say hello to Bumblebee. Bumblebee shouts as she presses her button on her gauntlet, and it seemed like it was actually working as she started to grow bigger at a faster rate. But just like before, the tech fired out and Karen shrunk down. Just like always. Karen lands on the ground and sees that she was the size of an insect again. Oh, come on. Karen says to herself as Giganta just laughs and walks to her. Say bye-bye, little bug. Giganta says as she lifts her hand up, and Karen and Izuku knew what she was about to do. No. Karen panics as the hand begins to fall down to her. Izuku tries to get up and stop her, but his body wasn't responding to him due to the pain. The hand falls and slams to the ground. Bumblebee. Deku yells as his eye widens in shock as he just witnessed his friend's murder. But then, I am alive. Izuku hears a faint yet familiar voice come from where Karen was. Bumblebee. Izuku calls and sees a yellow light fall out of Giganta's hand and land next to Izuku. I'm alive. Bumblebee yells as she and Izuku were relieved that she was still alive. That was when Izuku noticed the size difference between Karen and Giganta and got an idea. Your size, she can't hit you with her hands. Izuku says as Karen starts to get what he was saying. Because I'm a puny little insect. Bumblebee says. Not the words I was going to say, but yes, that's right. Deku yells. Now feeling confident, Bumblebee takes off to Giganta and starts to fly around her, acting like a fly as Giganta tries to punch and swat at her with her hands, but thanks to her upgrades in size, Karen easily avoids them. Karen flew up above and saw Giganta was waiting for her when she gained an idea. She flies straight to her and flies into her loft top and flies around it, causing Giganta to start laughing at the feeling right before she felt a sting, causing her to fall down to her butt. Karen flies out of the top and floats in front of her as she started to gain a smile. Talk about a small fish in a big pond, huh? Karen says as she flies away with the giant girl giving chase. Karen leads Giganta to a wall which she flies up to, and Giganta follows her by climbing it. Once the giant reached the top, Karen was there, waiting with her stingers out and aimed at her face. She fires them, but the stingers shot out a low changer at Giganta's face. Note to self, up power leaves to stingers. Eep. Karen eeps as she sees Giganta throw a punch at her. She dodges it and gains an idea. She flies straight to Giganta, who throws another punch, but Karen quickly dodges it and the punch lands. Not on Karen but to Giganta herself right in the face as it throws her off on the loop. Karen just floats to the dazed Giganta and smirks as the giant was trying to keep her balance. Hey, why you hitting yourself? Karen taunts as she taps Giganta on her nose and causes her to fall over the railing and send her crashing straight into the mall floor with enough floor to go through all the levels until hitting and stopping at the underground parking lot. Karen flies back down to the normal level and grows back to her normal size and sees the holes. Did I do that? Karen asks before seeing Giganta was laying down there, defeated. Karen-san, what happened? Karen turns and sees Izuku, who was being held up by Diana, Babs, and Kara, who just arrived back from space, meet up with her. I won. Karen yells as she goes over to them and hugs them in victory. But she soon realizes who she was hugging and eeps while backing away, blushing. Nice job, kid. Kara says and pats Karen's back. You fought strong, young Karen. Diana says. Growth tech. Who needs ya? Babs cheers. Izuku looks down to Karen and places his hand on her shoulder, making her look at him. See, Karen. You don't need to change who you are, you just have to embrace yourself and not what others think of you. Izuku says as Karen returns the smile but still blushes. Thanks, Izuku, for helping me realize that. Karen says, feeling proud of herself for a change. The next day, we return once again to Metropolis High at the foot, and we see Karen was walking on the track to school as she was busy texting on her phone, but this time, she was with Izuku as he had met up with her on the way to school, and the two walked together. As they walked, Doris and Leslie were seen hanging around with Doris having her foot in her hand. Once the two had spotted the two friends, Doris smirks. Hey, Beecher, heads up. Doris yells as she throws her foot at Karen. Izuku sighed and was about to catch it when Karen, acting purely on instinct, catches the without even looking up from her phone. Once she noticed that she had the in her hands, this shocked her as she never could do that, and Izuku was impressed by this. The two look at the bullies and see their shocked expressions, upon seeing Karen catching the hey, give me back my, Doris demeaned. Karen looks at the and then at Doris and then to Izuku as she remembers his story and advice as she grins. I don't know, I guess if you can get it, meathead. Karen says as she starts to run away with the as Doris gave chase as Izuku ran from them to make sure Karen won't get hurt. While she may have a long way to go until she could really call herself a brave hero like her friends, Karen knew that this was the first big step in the right direction. Social status, reputation, and identity. Those are one of the things that humans have held within society since the beginning of time. Just your name and what family you're from can hold a lot of power and be involved in anything you did or worked for, at the office, at home, on the streets, and this was not so different in high school. In fact, it made it a lot more powerful as it should be. For example, the jocks and cheerleaders, from their performances on the field, court, which gave them the power they had to rule over the other students. Every school has people that held power and status, and Metropolis High was no different, and all knew just one person who held power over them. And this person was in the gymnasium, with a group of girls and one of the school's coaches, as it was the gymnastics tryouts for this year's team. One of the girls was standing not too far from the rest as she was prepping herself for her tryout. She had light tan skin, brown eyes with dark pink eyeliner makeup, long blonde hair tied in a ponytail, and was currently wearing the gymnastic team outfit, which was a blue and orange leotard with a white stripe coming from her shoulder, crossing her chest and ending right up to her right hip. She was Barbara Ann Minerva, or what she was better known to everyone within the school as Barbai. She was the daughter of a famous explorer and businessman, which she of course brags about at every given moment, as she was the school's top achiever, having been #1 in pretty much everything in the school. Barbai takes a deep breath as she looks at a little jumping board in front of her. She sprints towards it at high speed, making a big jump on it, which causes her to soar across the gym as she does a triple rolling front flip and makes a perfect landing on both of her feet as she does an elegant pose as her teammates cheer for her, with one of them holding a towel for her while the coach nods and writes down her score on her clipboard. "If you keep vaulting like that, Babri, we might actually win gold this year," one of the gymnasts says, awestruck by Babri's display of skill. Barbai takes the towel and uses it to wipe off the little sweat she has gotten from her flips. "Well, it wasn't me who fell on the uneven bars," Barbai says as she places the towel around her neck, while the girl she spoke to looks down embarrassed. "Remained on the incident where she fell onto the uneven bars while she was practicing something." "Nice work, Barbai. That might have been your cleanest vault yet," the coach compliments as she walks over to the girls. "Great, if it's settled, I'm captain again. Let's get one thing clear," Barbai says as she looked like she was about to say something serious to her teammates, but the coach stops her. "Hold on, we've got one more girl who's looking to get on the team. A Diana Prince," the coach says, causing Barbai to roll her eyes. "Oh right, the new Greek girl," Barbai says. They turn to the back of the gym and see Diana in the same leotard, crouching down on the floor as she looked to be praying. "Lift me, Boreas. Let your wintry breath keep me aloft," Diana whispers to herself, praying to the Greek gods watching over her. "Prince." Diana was forced out of her praise as she looks up and sees everyone looking at her, while Barbai just raises one of her eyebrows. She then stands up and takes one deep breath and lets it out as Diana gains a determined expression. She takes off in a full sprint towards the jumping board. Just before she reaches the board, Diana flips herself to an angle jump before landing on the board and performs perfect rolling flips, flipping over the girls and coach right as she elegantly lands on her feet behind them as she strikes a pose. Everyone apart from Barbai was in shock and in awe at the elegance Diana displayed in her flips. The girls rush over to the Amazonia and gawk at her while the coach looks at her and Barbai, and a thought came into her mind. "Maybe this year we should have co-captains," the coach says, thinking that Diana and Barbai would be a great combination for the team. Barbai, on the other hand, didn't think the same. "What? Absolutely not," Barbai yells, thinking that the coach won't let her go over some new kid. "Okay, congratulations, Prince. You're the captain," the coach says, going over to Diana and the rest of the girls as she completely misses the shocked expression on Barbai's face when she said that. The other girls congratulate Diana on making it into the team and becoming the captain, causing the Amazon warrior to fur on the attention. Barbai was still standing on her stop as she watches the attention all go to Diana as her expression slowly turns from shock to slow burning fury and jealousy from how this foreign student stole something she worked strong for every day. Just as this was happening, the doors suddenly burst open and Hal runs in with his foot jersey and his tights as he runs across the gym and was holding a familiar large yellow bag in his hands. The door burst open again and Izuku enters the gym with a sweaty, worried expression, as he was only dressed in a white t-shirt and blue shorts, with his scars being visible beside the one that was hidden by his black compression sleeve on his right bicep. He chases Hal around the gym, totally unaware for the girls and the coach were watching them as, "Oh, okay, Jordan-san, very funny. May I please have my clothes back?" Izuku kindly asks, worried over his clothes, notebooks, and costume in there, with Hal just shaking his head. "Sorry, new kid, but it's a tradition here at Metropolis High as the QB has to prank the new kid. Sorry, I don't make the rules here since I got the same thing when I first got here. But I'll do it easy for you. Here," Hal yells, right before he tosses the bag up into the air. Worried that the contents in the bag would spill out, Izuku rushes of it as he runs towards a pommel horse and hops onto it before leaping off it, soaring through the air. He reaches his bag and grabs onto it before twisting his body, performing several aerial twist flips before landing back onto the floor, sliding onto for a stop. "That was close Izuku says, letting out a breath of relief as his stuff was safe. Izuku stands up and places his bag on his back and turns around, only to see the girls, Barbai and the coach were shocked at what they just witnessed. "DMN dude, didn't know you had some moves like that." Hal whistles, impressed. "Greetings, Izuku." Diana waves at Izuku, who waves back but stops when he sees just what she and the other girls were wearing. HHH hi Diana. SS sorry for intruding in your practice. We'll be leaving now. Izuku stutters as he runs for the door, but not before grabbing Hal by his wrist and pulling him with him. Hey, what you doing? I wanna stay here with the ladies. Hal whines, wanting to stay and see the girls in their outfits. No, that's rude. Izuku yells as the two exits the gym. That was something. The coach says as she turns to Diana. Prince, you know that kid? Yes, he is my first and only male friend. Diana answers. Has he ever been interested in gymnastics? The coach asks Diana, is she thinking about it? I do not believe so. All I've seen from Izuku is study and helping others. Diana says, knowing well enough that Izuku was not interested in sports. That's a damn shame. That kid would have made a great member of the team. The coach says, shrugging as the team started to get ready for routine practice as Barbai just glared at Diana, looking at her as if she was a challenger to her spot in school. A few hours later, AP Calculus class. In AP, most of the students were either asleep, bored out of their minds, or simply doing something to keep them awake. Barbai was in the class, wearing her usual outfit, which consisted of a long-sleeve yellow jacket with cheetah spots on the fake fur on the sleeves, along with wearing a short red skirt and white high-heel boots. She had a makeup pocket mirror in her hand, used in making sure that her makeup wasn't running nor off as the teacher was walking around, handing back last week's quiz as she reaches Barbai. Nice job, Barbai. The AP teacher says as she hands Barbai her test, which had a 100% on it, causing the blonde girl to smirk at seeing her score. It's not every day you get to see a perfect score in AP Calculus. The teacher says as she turns to the other side of the class. Is what I would be saying if it wasn't Diana and Izuku over here. Both of them got a 102% on the test. That's incredible and should be mathematically impossible, but well done you two. That's a new school record. The teacher says as she shows the class Izuku's and Diana's answer sheets to reveal the 102% on them before handing them to the duo. The class look at the two and gave them a round of applause, causing Izuku to blush from the attention and sheepishly smiles while Diana just slights blushes and smiles. Barbai on the other hand was not clapping as she was getting angry, not only being outshined by Diana for the second time today but outshined by her boy toy for a friend. She crushes her mirror a bit as she glares at them. A few more hours later, after school, after suffering defeat after defeat by the unknowing hands of Diana, Barbai decides to help her unwind from Diana by hosting a pool party at her house for her friends, subjects. Barbai pulls up in her very expensive convertible right at the school front where her friends were, all holding posters for something that she really didn't care about. Hello everyone, pool party at my house. Barbai declares, knowing that no one would turn down a party invite from a rich girl who was hosting said party. Sorry Barbai, we can't come. We're going to stay and help Diana decorate for the school dance that's next week. One of the girls from before says, causing Barbai's eyes to snap open as the Amazon in question stepped forward from behind the group of girls. Join us. There will be camaraderie and merriment. Diana offers, holding one of the flyers in her hands. Soon, all of the girls in the group start telling Barbai just how incredible Diana is since coming to the school, which was not really making Barbai's stress and jealousy of Diana all that better as she was listening to everyone say, Diana's so awesome. Diana's cool. Diana this, Diana that. She couldn't stand the idea for someone was getting all the attention and it wasn't her. Eventually, the camel's back broke as Barbai lets out one long scream as she steps onto the gas pedal and floors her car away from the school and group. The dust clears and Izuku was seen, carrying a large box of posters in his hands, appears walking toward the group. Was that Minerva-san? What happened? Izuku asks. He heard the scream and saw the fancy-look car drive off and he assumed it was Barbai. It was her, but it looked like she had to leave before we could properly ask her if she would like in assisting us. Diana says, watching the car speed away. What did she need? Izuku asks as he momentarily sets the box down. Maybe she was rushing to get her party she is hosting this evening. Diana says, making Izuku turn to her with a confused expressed. A party. But it's Tuesday. Nobody parties on a Tuesday. Izuku says, knowing well that literally nobody parties on a Tuesday. Eventually the group gather their things and walk back into the school to do their tasks. Back with Barbai, she was still screaming as she blitzes through traffic and the lights except when it was red. She continues to scream all the way until she reaches her house, which in reality was a large mansion. Barbai exits her car and processes in entering her mansion still screaming as the door was opened by two of her butlers to whom she doesn't give thanks or even acknowledge them as she stomps her way through the large yet empty halls until she reaches a door. She tries to enter through the door but it doesn't bug. She looks at the door and sees a private. On it. Nice try daddy. Barbai says as she narrows her eyes and kicks the door open. Once the door had opened, Barbai walks into the room which was a study, filled with an assortment of books, exotic weapons, and trophies, both material and game animal heads. Most found in the heart of the African savanna and ancient relics and artifacts, most looking like were a part of rituals and occults that should not be named. Barbai continues to walk around the room in search of something she thought could help her overthrow Diana, and get her spot as the queen once more. She reaches a glass cabinet in the back of the room by a desk that was filled with more dark and strange relics and artifacts. Barbie opens it and starts looking at the contents to see what was the right one to use. Too quick, Barbie says, looking at a bottle that had black liquid inside and a sketch of a skull on the bottle. Too humane, Barbie says, looking at a dagger. Too slow, Barbie says, looking at a voodoo doll. She continues to look at the cabinet's content with nothing, looking to do what she wanted in her quest until she spots a statue that was in the shape of a cheetah. Hello, this will do nicely, Barbie says, taking the statue. Diana Prince, Miss Little Perfect. Let us see how you deal with a curse that's fit for the perfect girl, Barbie says as she starts to rub on the statue's head. Pity to those on the cheetah path, for they shall feel the cheetah's wrath. Grown from spite and hate, swift as the wind, she shall seal your fate. Barbie yells while rising the statue in the air, expecting for something to happen. But strangely enough, nothing did happen. Barbie waves the statue around before lowering it back to her face and sees it did nothing. GRR, stupid useless hunk of junk, Barbie says, dropping the statue to the floor and walking to the door. Just as she slams the door close, the statue's green gem eyes begin to amorously glow before turning to the door, where Barbie just was. The next day, Metropolis High School. It was the next day and the weather was not on the bright side, with the clouds blocking out the sun, with most of the clouds looking dark as if it was about to rain. We see Young Justice together making their way to the school. I can't believe that the first school dance is coming so soon. Aren't you guys excited? Not really. It's just another school snooze fest, but it's just something with crappy music, Kara says. Oh Kara, this does give us girls the chance to dress up and flaunt to all those there, and to showcase our dance moves, Z says. DDD dresses. Dancing. Karen stutters as she blushes. She really couldn't imagine herself in a dress without getting embarrassed, and she doesn't know how to dance. Jessica sees her fur and places her hand on Karen's shoulder to comfort her. Relax, Karen. I'm sure Z was just exaggerating. Right, Z? Jess asks while giving the magical girl a sharp glance. Was I? Z says with a smirk, causing Jess to sigh from her antics. Z. Babs turns to the only male member of the team. Say, Izuku, does your school back home have dances too? Babs asks, causing Izuku to think on the question for a moment. No, not really. My school back home really isn't the type in hosting a dance, especially with what has happened over the past year, Izuku says, but mutters the last bit to himself, knowing fully well that UA would not have a dance due to a possible villain attack if they had one. So, would that mean that this will be your first? Yeah, it would be, Izuku says. Babs rushes to his face, invading his personal space as usual. You have to come, Babs yells as her eyes lit up. I don't know, Izuku says, rubbing the please with a cherry on top of a super yummy sundae. Babs says as she gives Izuku her best impression of puppy eyes. I'll think about it, Izuku says, causing the hyperactive bat-theme heroine to cheer in victory. Well, I believe you will like what the decoration committee and I have done for this merriment, Diana says, feeling proud of what she and the others did yesterday. Yeah, I hope everyone else is liking the decorations, Izuku says, feeling equally proud. Well, let's check them out, Babs shouts while opening the door. Upon entering the school, the teens noticed several of the students were gathered and looking at the posters. When they take a closer look at the posters, they saw they were ripped and torn apart. What happened? Izuku asks, picking up one of the remains of one of the posters. Looks like someone already tore up the dance floor, Kara says, all pun intended, as lighting went off outside and rain began to pour from the heavens. That isn't funny, Kara, Jessica says. You're right. Instead of cutting the rug, they cut the posters. Kara jokes again, this one wasn't funny as well. That's not what I meant. Jessica sighs, rubbing her forehead from the headache she was getting, but Kara wasn't done yet. Wait. I got one more. Maybe the dance shouldn't have booked a band that shreds. Kara jokes once more as the jokes were not helping. Diana and Izuku goes over to one of the posters still attached to the wall and sees scratch marks on it. They could tell that some sort of animal had done this. But why and what? Eventually, the bell rings and everyone expects our heroes who stayed to help with cleaning. Diana excuses herself from the others as she had practiced to attend. She makes her way to the women's locker room to go and change, but on her way there, she couldn't help but think about who or what tore the posters she and the other hand made. Diana reaches the locker room and processes to her locker where her gym clothes were. She opens the locker and takes out her stuff. When she closes the locker door, she sees a scratch mark clawed onto her locker, causing her to gasp. She traces her fingers onto the scratch and feels that they are fresh. Then she hears something rush beside her. She turns and sees a bottle on the floor, rolling across the floor. She looks around if anyone was in the room when something rushes behind her, causing her to turn only to see nothing. She cautiously turns around, not knowing what was going on, only for her to see something in front of her, with it pouncing on her. Back with the others, they were continuing to clean up and tear the last of the destroyed and damaged posters while the rain outside got worse. Guys, we better hurry up before someone slashes the ticket prices to the dance. Kara says another bad pun, much to Jessica's dismay. Kara. Jess groans, she's had enough of the Kryptonians' bad puns. Suddenly, a phone goes over as the girls turn to Izuku, who sees it was his phone that was ringing. He takes his phone out and sees it was his mom calling and had an idea why she was calling, so he picked the call up. Hello. Yeah, Mom. Does she have Mr. Snuggles with her? She does. Okay, tell her that I'll be with her all day when I get back home and we'll build a pillow fort to protect us from the lighting monsters. Love you too, Mom. Okay, bye, see you later. Izuku says as he ends the call. Was that your mom? Karen asks with Izuku nodding. Yeah, she called me to tell me that Eri's hiding under her bed. Izuku says, causing the girls to get confused. Why would she do that? Z asks. She's scared of lightning and thunder. She would always hide somewhere whenever a thunderstorm went over. So, I decided to stay with her to protect and play with her while making a fort of pillows. Izuku says, making the girls awe at his kindness and generosity towards his sister. Wow, that's really nice of you, Izuku. Babs says, I'm her big brother and hero. I'll do anything to keep her happy and safe. Izuku says as he smiles, thinking of her and her happy smile. Just as they finishing the cleanup, they hear Diana scream and a loud bang from the girls' locker room. The female of Young Justice enters the locker room and finds Diana laying on the floor. She looked like she was fighting something feral, as there were claw scratch marks on some parts of her body with her hair, and clothes were damaged and out of place. Diana, what happened? Who did this to you? Karen asks. I do not know. Something knocked into me. It came out of nowhere. Wait, where is Izuku? Diana asks, not seeing her friend with the others. This is the women's changing room. He'd probably get into a lot of trouble if he was caught in here. Z says, clarifying the situation on their missing friend. And he's outside. Jessica says as she pulls out her phone and dials a number. It didn't take long until the call was picked up. Is everything okay in there? Izuku asks through the phone as he was worried. We're okay. Diana's fine. Babs says as Izuku let out a sigh. Diana does the same until she realizes something. We must find the one behind this attack before they hurt anyone else. Diana says, but who would do this to you? Karen asks. Babs starts thinking about this and lets out a gasp as she came to a possible theory. Her gasp alters everyone, including Izuku. Don't you guys see? Someone is clearly behind this, as they are most likely fueled with jealousy and hatred and feel that they're having their status quo taken from them when Diana showed up to Metropolis. Feeling that Diana is a possible rival and threat to them, and added to their existing crumpling, which most likely has been caused by absent parents and the lack of proper happy childhood, has caused an ancient horrible curse that has manifested itself into some weird yet dangerous feline monster which is stalking its intended target, which is Diana. Barbara shouts as she finishes her explanation. Everyone in the room looks at her with a dumbfounded expression and were quiet, as Babs's explanation really didn't help them understand. Did anyone get that? All I could hear was a gasp. Izuku asks, when Babs was explaining what she thought was going on, all he could hear was babbling. What I am trying to say is that there's a monster on the loose. Babs shouts, going to layman's terms. She goes over to Jess's phone and talks to Izuku. Izuku, did you see anyone leave the room? Babs asks. No, I saw nothing come out. Izuku says, if there really is a monster after you, then we have to get you to somewhere safe. Jessica says as she helps Diana back to her feet. It's not Diana that needs protecting. Kara says, punching her fist into her hand, with Diana catching what she was implying. Whatever is in the school could be a big danger to the rest of the students and staff. We must find a way in evacuating everyone from the building. Diana says, but how? Z asks. We could try and asking everyone to leave in an orderly fashion and ... Wait, Kara, what are you doing? Izuku was saying until the sound of glass shattering was heard through the phone before hearing some shuffling from Izuku's side until the call was dropped. Then, a siren goes off which startles the girls a bit, with all the students and staff running out of the school and into the stormy weather. The girls then notice Kara was not in the room before seconds later. Kara walks back in with a blushing and steaming Izuku over her shoulder as she approaches the girls. She sees their expressions. What? You guys were going to take forever, plus this way is faster. Kara says. But why bring Izuku here? Karen asks as Kara sets Izuku down. So Greenie can safely change into his suit in the showers while we change here. And he won't peek. Right, Greenie? Kara asks as her irises glow red while glaring at Izuku, who gulps. Right, Izuku says. Once a minute passes, the entire building was empty minus for our heroes, as they were sure that it was them and the monster who was left in the building. Looks like we're the ones in the school. Kara says, using her X-ray vision to scan the entire school. Then come Sisters and Zeus's champion. Let us begin the hunt. Diana says as Izuku runs to the shower as they all change into their hero outfits. Once fitted into their outfits, they exit the locker room and walk into the hallway, only for the power to go out, forcing. Alright team, since there is much ground to cover, I say we should split ourselves. Wonder Woman says, causing the rest to look at her at what she said. You mean split up? Supergirl says, thinking that what she means. Yes, that too. Wonder Woman says, I don't think that's a good idea. I think we should stick together in this. Deku says, knowing from movie logic that it's never good to split up as it always leads to bad things. Relax, Deku. That stuff only happens in movies. Besides, that only happens to those who drink, smoke, or to have sex. Zatanna says, missing the blushes from Bumblebee and Deku. With most of the team agreeing, they split up and went to different sections of the school. Green Lantern went to search the library and the auditorium, Batgirl went to search at the ground level of the school and the labs, Zatanna headed towards the cafeteria and second floor, Supergirl headed towards the principal's office, and then to the teacher's lounge, Bumblebee to look through the second floor, Deku to the footfield before looking through the locker rooms and the roof, and finally, Wonder Woman to the third floor. All of the teens went to their assigned spots, unaware that a pair of emerald green silted eyes were observing them from within the shadows. Green Lantern. Green Lantern enters the library only to see it was dark. Using her ring to form a construct of a candle to illuminate the area, she cautiously starts her search, not really knowing just what kind of monster she and the others were facing. She makes her way to the first row of bookshelves and looks in between them only to see what was being lit in front of her by her candlelight, and not the far back. She quickly changes the construct to a flashlight and flashes the light into the far back of the row while walking in between the shelves. She steadily walks and looks around for any show of life as she reaches the end of the shelves when they led her to a row of computers. Suddenly, she hears something behind her which causes her to turn to the source only to recognize it as a cat's meow. Oh, gracias a Dios, it's only a cat. Come on out, little kitty. Jessica calls the cat while walking to where the cat was calling. She reaches the location but was met with another row of books. Confused, she turns her flashlight construct into a lantern construct when the meow noise is turned into that of a big cat's growl, causing Jess to turn right on time for the monster to knock her into the books behind her, knocking her out while snuffing the construct laid out. Batgirl. With Batgirl, she was slowly walking through the halls, slightly terrified as she had many bat-themed monster hunting gadgets on her which included a bat wooden stake, a bat night vision googles, and a bat dog whistle. Batgirl was busy watching a radar she held which showed the current live locations of her teammates throughout the school. She scrolled left and right on the radar, in hopes she could pinpoint the monster's position and alter her friends. Suddenly, she sees Green Lantern's logo blink to indicate that she stopped. Zooming on the radar, Batgirl observed the location as she spots a red dot approaching Green Lantern's position, only to see her logo disappear, and the red dot continuing to prowl around. Ah no, Jess. Batgirl utters, afraid of what had become of her friend only for her fears to enlarge as she sees the red dot closing onto her position. Quickly turning around, she saw on the radar that the red dot was coming to her from behind. Batgirl quickly pulls out one of her batarangs and slowly backs away while looking at the radar. She sees the red dot stop just in front of her before it moves right onto her logo. Frightened, Batgirl throws a barrage of batarangs around, hoping she got the monster. Once she stops, she looks at the radar if the red dot had disappeared, only to find it was still on her. She pulls out one more batarang only to get pounced from above and her radar falls to the floor as the red dot and her logo flash before it disappears, and the red dot remains with it moving to its next victim. Zatanna. Inside the cafeteria, Zatanna was floating around while paying close attention to her surroundings while having her hands up for a spell just in case. As she floats around, a shadow was looming just above her, and Z senses this as she turns to where the shadow was and fires a magical blast to where the shadow was, only to see there was nothing there, and that she fired near a vandaning machine. Phew, there was nothing. Zatanna sighs, but she then hears a growl from behind. Frightened, she turns around and sees the tables getting knocked over by something with glowing green eyes. Zatanna panics and starts firing spam of magical blasts at this figure with it dodging and weaving past the blasts, while continuing to make its way to her. Z continues to blast at the monster only to see that none of her attacks were hitting it. Once the monster had reached her, Z screams and flies out of the cafeteria with the monster giving chase. Supergirl. Inside the principal's office, Supergirl quickly notices that everything in the room were okay and in place. That made her go on edge. She then clearly hears growling with something quietly entering the room thanks to her enhanced senses. Forget it, whatever you are. You can't get me cause I got inferred vision. Kara says as her eyes glow and scan the room for a heat signature. When she turns to the room's bookshelf, she spots a signature that was hiding behind it, like a predator stalking its prey. Once it saw that it was outed, the monster starts to bounce around the room when Kara threw punches at it but missed due to its impressive speed. Think you're fast. Guess what? I'm fast too. Kara yells, giving chase to the monster as the two bounce, fly around the room until the monster realized it couldn't win against her, so it took to escape her. It quickly exits the room and starts to run in a random direction with Kara following it by flying close to it. She couldn't catch it as it was leading her to sharp corners which resulted in her having to slow down and avoid crashing. The monster was now on a straightaway and Kara started to pick her speed up. She caught up to it and was about to grab it but it suddenly stops, letting her fly past her and it jumps. Kara looks for it but saw it wasn't then. Just before she could use her powers, something was shot at her, causing her to freeze up and go stiff. So stiff, then she fell to the ground and laid there like a down statue. Oh. Kara could hear a familiar voice utter and saw Z look down at her with a sheepish expression. I'm so sorry. I thought you were. Z was saying until the two hear growling and something down dropped to the floor. Kara sees Z look up to what had made the noise and sees Z's eyes widen with terror. The monster, Z says right before getting attacked by the monster and screams. Bumblebee. Z Zatanna. Bumblebee whispers, as she just heard Z's screams. She was walking around the second floor of the school when she heard Z's screams of terror which frightened her. Z shrinks down and starts flying down. Why did we agree to split up? Everyone knows that splitting up is usually a bad idea. Take any classic horror movie ever. I mean, the only thing left is the monster is looming in a shadowy place, and you can only see it when lightning strikes. Karen says, flying the hall. Once she reaches a corner, she stops when something was standing close to her, slowly turning her head to the figure that was hidden by the shadows. But lightning strikes, briefly illuminating the area, and the lighting reveals the monster's face to Karen, showing off its fangs to her. Eep! Karen yelps as she quickly falls away with the monster giving chase. The shrunken girl flew down the halls until she reaches the gymnasium and takes cover by some of the equipment. Quickly peeking from her hiding spot, Karen sees the monster crawl into the gym with its eyes eerily glowing as it starts to sniff the air in search of her. It walks to her, making Karen quickly duck back down and try to remain still and silent. The monster walks over to her spot and stops as it sniffs the air once more, its eyes open, and turns to where Karen was hiding. Karen remains stiff and silent as a glowing emerald green silted eyes as Karen shakes in fear. Soon though, the eye moves away as Karen lets out a held breath and starts to take in deep breaths before calming down. Okay. Karen whispers to herself as she readies her gauntlets and gains a determined expression before she flies out into the open. HHH. Karen yells, firing stringers at the monster. Once she thinks she's got it, her expression changes to fear as she stares to the monster's face as it growls at her before opening its mouth and pouncing on her. Deku, moments before. Deku was outside the school, having just done sweeping the foot field, the stands, and the locker room twice. He was on the roof, checking for any signs of life. He looks at the wet terrain and saw that there was nothing on the roof besides a few deflated old books, old cigarette butts, leaves, dead rats, and himself. Looks like nothing was here for a while. Might have to check with the others and see if they found anything. Deku says he goes to his earpiece and contacts Batgirl for an update from her. Barbara, I'm done checking on the roof and the foot pitch. Looks like it's not there. Did you find anything? Deku asks, but all he got was silence from the Camo link. Barbara, do you read me? Deku asks but still got nothing from her and got him confused. Weird ... Why isn't she answering? Deku asks himself. He got worried and decides to SWCH Camos to Jessica's. Jessica, I think something's happened to Batgirl. She isn't responding to her Camos. Can you check on her? Deku asks but once again, he only receives silence from the other side. Jessica, can you hear me? Izuku asks. He started thinking on why they weren't responding until he came to one horrifying conclusion. Oh no, Izuku utters as his eyes widen. The monster got them. He goes back to his earpiece and tries Zatanna, hoping she wasn't attacked by the monster as well. See, are you there? I think something has happened to Jessica and Babs. Are you there? Deku asks but to his fears, silence was all that was there. See, are you there? Deku yells, but again nothing. Panicking of the rest, he goes to Kara, thinking that she was the one standing as her powers literally had her invincible. Kara, please answer me. I think the monster's gotten to the others. Are you okay? Deku asks, but he was welcomed by silence from her. No ... not you, Kara. Deku says as he lowers his head, worried for what happened to his friends. Suddenly, static was heard on his earpiece which brought him out of his thought as someone was speaking on the Camos. Help. I'm in the gym. It's got me. Karen's voice speaks as the Camo went to static. Karen. Deku yells only to hear something eating something as his eyes widen on what he was thinking what was happening. Quickly activating OFA, full cowling, Izuku jumps off the roof before spotting the window to the gymnasium. Moving his hands before him, his glove's outer layer wrist jolt forward as he was about to fur his fingers. OFA, Delaware Smash, Air Force. Izuku mentally shouts, furring his fingers which release two massive bursts of wind blasts from his hands and propel him towards the window at high speeds. Deku goes through the window and rolls onto the gym until stopping. He looks around in search of Karen when he gets tackled to the floor. He was dizzy for a bit but gets snapped back to his senses when he sees deadly green eyes staring into his as they glow ominously to him. He then feels this figure sniff him a bit before feeling a tongue run across his mask-cladded face. Feeling gross by that, he calls on OFA and kicks the monster off him. Just as he gets up, he barely dodges a claw slash from this monster as he jumps back. When he lands, he looks down at the monster's figure and starts to see it was crawling towards the only light lit in the room thanks to the hole in the window made by him. It crawls to the light before it starts to stand on 2 feet and Izuku sees it was an anthropomorphic cheetah woman with an hourglass figure, long tail, covered in yellow fur with black spots, and the iconic black tier lines belonging to cheetahs. What are you? Deku asks, but the cheetah woman doesn't answer him as she just spits Karen out of her mouth and charges at high speeds that Izuku couldn't dodge. Just as it was about to pounce on Izuku as he prepares himself for it when a silver bracelet blocks the slash and hits the anthropomorphic cheetah woman, sending her flying back to the other side of the gym as corrects herself midair and lands on all four, scratching the wood floor. Get away from him, you cheetah. Deku turns and sees Wonder Woman next to him. Wonder Woman, you're okay. Izuku says, happy to see one of his friends was okay. Yes, I am fine. But I can't say the same for our friends. I found them, injured and no responsive in the middle of the bottom level, and I heard young Bumblebee's distress, and I headed here when I saw you were in danger. Diana says as the two turn to the cheetah woman and see her growling and glaring at them, but primarily towards Diana. We have to stop her before she escapes and hurts anyone else out in the city. Deku says, with red vein-like lines briefly surging across his body before being replaced by his green bioelectricity. Agreed. Diana says. The cheetah charges toward Diana and starts clawing at her while the Amazonia warrior blocks the attacks with her bracelets. Deku joins the fight by throwing a spinning heel kick to Cheetah, but she ducks under the kick and claws at Deku's kicking leg, tearing through his knee pad at the thigh but thankful not cutting through his costume. As Deku falls to the ground, Cheetah quickly on him and was about to claw at his face when Diana uses her lasso of truth and wraps it around the anthropomorphic cheetah woman and pulls her away from Deku right as the cheetah was able to escape the bind before it slips into the shadows. Deku and Wonder Woman meet up in the center of the light and stand back to back as they cautiously wait for their enemy's next move. Then, the cheetah rushes by them and slashes at Diana, who wasn't ready as she cuts her forearms, causing the Amazon to groan from the pain. Just as Deku turns to her, he suddenly gets slashed across the cross, cutting through his costume and undershirt, giving him slash marks on his chest. This process continues for a bit with the cheetah delivering a quick attack on our duo, and them not being able to properly defend themselves from the attacks once both of them spotted slash marks and cuts on their costumes and part of the bodies where it was starting to bleed. Just when the cheetah was about to deliver a few more cuts, Diana turns to her and grabs Izuku, and starts to spin him before letting him go and sending him flying to her as he spins himself before sticking his leg out to her. Smash! Izuku yells once he delivers a kick onto the cheetah's stomach, sending her back and hitting the ground. She slowly started to get back up while clinging to her stomach. We weren't letting you injure us. We were learning your movements. Cheetah looks up and sees Wonder Woman and Deku, who had landed on the floor, were looking at her. Deku and I discreetly planned while you were in the shadow to allow ourselves to be exposed and let you do your tactics while we learn your movements. Wonder Woman says. Sure, it was a risk since we were getting hurt, but we know your pattern now. Deku says as the two shift back into their fighting stances while Cheetah growls at them as she goes down to all four before she charges at them. Diana and Izuku charge as well, running side by side to not give their opponent a chance to slip away from them as they engage in combat with Cheetah slashing at them. But they evade the attacks while throwing punches and kicks at the anthropomorphic woman who nimbly evades them as well. Getting sick of this, Deku amps his power up from 8% to 20%, and disappears from sight until reappearing before Cheetah, causing her eyes to widen as he sends a kick to her midsection. Smash! Izuku yells, kicking Cheetah as the force of the kick causes air pressure to blow in the gym and sends the anthropomorphic woman flying in the air. She soars and met with Diana, who was waiting for her as the Amazon princess arches her leg up, before sending the leg down upon Cheetah as she delivers an axe kick onto Cheetah, forcing the feline line woman to plummet to the ground as she crashes into it, causing a crater to form in the wooden floor. Just as she bounced up from the impact and let out a pained gasp as Deku was on her again and was readying his final attack. He arches his fist back as the bioelectricity surges around him while the outer layer of his Glover jolts forward. Boston, air, smash. Izuku yells, move his fist forward and furs all his fingers, creating a massive wind burst, sending everything flying around and sending Cheetah flying out of the gym and into the locker room. Upon seeing this, Deku and Wonder Woman head into the locker room, ready to capture this villain once and for all. When they enter the room, they saw it was trashed with some of the lockers on the floor but knew that after receiving an attack all that at point range, Cheetah wouldn't be getting up soon. Just then, they hear someone grunt near them under the lockers. The duo move the lockers off the floor and spot Barbai laying on the floor, looking like she had an encounter with Cheetah. Who's there? Barbai asks, starting to stir, causing Diana to quickly change back to her civilian clothing while Deku went to Bumblebee to check on her. Barbai, it's me, Diana. Are you alright? Diana asks, going to Barbai as she slowly opens her eyes. Diana. Is that you? Barbai asks, seeing Diana as her vision clears. Yes, it is me. Diana says. Barbai then shoot up and moves away from her. Stay away from me. The monster is still. Barbai yells, looking around for the cheetah. The monster has left Barbai. You do not need to worry. You're safe now. Diana says, going to her to ensure that things were okay now. Diana, I'm so sorry. Barbai says, getting Diana's attention. For what? Diana asks. It was my fault that the cheetah was summoned. Barbie says as she coughs before continuing, I was just so jealous of you. And I wanted to get rid of you, but I never wanted this. I'm so sorry. Barbie says as tears start to fall. Diana looks at her and felt bad for her, so she places her hand on Barbie's shoulder and makes the queen bee look at her and sees her smile. You need not to be envious of me. One person's success should never destroy yours. Jealousy is a green-eyed monster that will consume you and everything you love until there is nothing left but a hollow shell. Barbie, you must let yours go or else it will destroy you. Diana says as Barbie's tears fall once more. Why, you're right. I will, and I swear that I'll change. Barbie says, which makes Diana happy. Suddenly, a noise was made outside which alters them and puts them at edge until... Diana, are you here? Izuku's voice was heard, causing Diana to sigh in relief. My friend needs me. Diana says she was about to go to him when she turns back to Barbie. Will you be alright on your own? Diana asks with Barbie nodding. I'll be fine. Go to your friend. He sounds like he needs you. Barbie says. Diana nods and runs to the exit as she changes back to her hero outfit. Upon exiting the locker room, she saw the rest of her friends with Deku as they all had injuries and Supergirl was still frozen being carried by Batgirl. And Deku, Supergirl, Wonder Woman shouts, worried about Kara. She can't hear you. Batgirl says as the two gently set her down. She's fine though, but she'll be like this for 7 hours. Z says, knowing that Kara's going to be mad at her for this. Deku turns to Diana and takes his mask off. Diana, did you find the cheetah? Izuku asks, concerned if Cheetah was still out there. No, she's escaped, but we should deal with her more shiftily the next time we meet. Back in the locker room, we see Barbie at a sink, breathe as she washes her face from the running water. You say I should get rid of it, Diana. Why on earth would I give up something this amazing? Barbie asks as she looks up to the mirror and opens her eyes to reveal the same green eyes as the cheetah's as her mascara ran down her cheeks, giving her the similar black tear lines. Enjoy for time on top, Prince, for the queen will fight for her spot again. And maybe I'll take your little boyfriend as well. Barbie yells, laughing like a sinister fiend as the rain outside intensifies and lighting went off over Metropolis. It was another fine and warm day in Metropolis and we see Izuku, in his hero suit, casually jumping from building to building as he was heading home for the day. After a long day at school and during some patrolling around the city, he wanted a nice and quiet day, and so did the others in Young Justice. Man, am I tired. Hope everyone's having fun in their activities. Izuku says, thinking about the others and their activities. Jessica had a rally to go to that was just by the pier related to illegal fishing. Kara was at a rock concert in one of the many clubs spread around the city. Karen was at her home. She said she was going to do some upgrades to her stingers, upping their power output. Diana said as she was going to be by the junkyard to do her daily training routine. Z had a show to perform with her father at the city's main opera house. And Barbara said she had to go and finish something she has been working on for the past month and a half. She hasn't told them a thing whenever they asked just what she was doing, but they got nothing from her. She kept quiet about this project she was working on. The only thing they got from her was that once it's finished, they'll love it. Izuku stopped thinking once he saw he was in his neighborhood. He leaps over some more buildings until he reaches his house. He lands on the roof where a skylight was open there led into the attic. He takes off his bag and flips into the skylight, and into the attic where numerous items were there, including a backup suit and gear of Izuku in case his current one were to be damaged in battle. He goes to the ladder for its entrance and leaves the attic band and walks toward his bedroom. He enters it and it looked like how it was at his dorm looked back in Japan, but with a few new items there. The most noticeable ones were the pictures he and the girls took at the pier from the day they all met. One's of Imiri and an older teenager with blonde hair and a cow style, and the news reports of them during their time together, and a board on the wall with a map of Metropolis with strings pinned onto the map and board leading to various areas of the city. He changes out of his hero suit and into his causal wear and takes off his sneakers and leaves his room and walked downstairs. Once he reached the lower floor and into the kitchen to grab a fruit while he was there, he spots a brush of white by the couch in the living room while hearing something playing on the TV. He heads into the living room and spots Eri sitting on the couch, eyes glued to the TV as she was watching My Little Pony. Hi, Emoto. Izuku greets her, and the little white-haired girl turns her head to him and she beams before jumping from the couch and rushes toward him, and leaps at him to deliver a big hug, and he catches her so she wouldn't fall. Izunai, you're back. Eri yells, happy her big brother was back. He sets her down with her looking up at him. How was school? It was fine, a bit boring compared to UA, but alright. How was school for you? Izuku asks. The two head back to the couch and sit on it to watch the cartoon together. It was fine. We finger-painted and played some games as well. It was fun. Eri says, smiling. Izuku recuperates the smile with one of his own. That's good. As long as you had fun, I'm happy. Izuku says. He looks around for any sign of his mother since now would be the time that he saw no sign of her at all. Where's Mom? Izuku asks. Oh, she left not that all ago, but she told me to give you this when you came. Eri says, pulling out a folded piece of paper. She hands it to Izuku. He looks at the paper and saw his name on it and saw it was written by his mom. He opens it and reads its contents. Izuku, there was an emergency at the firm and I had to leave urgently for it. I was supposed to go and get the groceries, but thanks to the sudden call, I can't. Could you please watch Eri and go get the week's groceries for me? The money and list of groceries are on the counter and there's some of you too to spend. I'll possibly be back before dinner, but if I'm not, you can order takeout. Please don't eat anything sweet for dinner. Take care of your sister and be safe. Love, Mom. Izuku turns to the counter and saw a couple of notes on it, showing the note was real. I see. Izuku says. He heads over to the kitchen counter and grabs the list there. He reads it and sees it was just the minimum of foods along with sneaks and other things. He looks up from the paper and sees the clock to see it was only 4:56 p.m. Well, the store only closes at 8 and it's still lit out. But, should I bring Eri along with me? Izuku thought. He could have asked Kara to look after her if he was at her home and not at her show. He couldn't even ask any of the others as well. And that was no way he'd ask Hal given his style. So, he had no other option but to bring her along. He turns to the child in question. Hey Eri, do you want to help me get the groceries? Izuku asks. Eri beams and nods. Yes, I want to help. Eri yells, bouncing in place. Izuku couldn't help but chuckle. Great, let's go and get your bandana and hat. Izuku says. They went upstairs to grab their things and bags. Once they had them, they were at the front door. Izuku had on his short-sleeve green edition AM hoodie and backpack while Eri had on her sun hat and bandana to hide her horn and her little bag as well. They were by the front door, putting on their shoes. Once they finished putting them on, they went to the door. Izuku looks down to Eri. Ready? Izuku asks. Eri nods. Hi, Eri says. Then let's go. Izuku says, holding onto Eri's hand as they exit the house, and Izuku locks it before setting off. As they walk toward the first corner of their block, Eri looks up and sees something. Oni-chan. Eri calls Izuku. Yeah, Izuku says, looking down at Eri. What's that? Eri asks, pointing toward the sky at something. What's what? Izuku asks. He follows what Eri was pointing at and sees a pink flare. Izuku says he sees the flare's trail and looks at its end to track where it was shot from and saw it was shot from on top of the Daily Planet building. As he looks at the flare, Izuku realizes something about it. Wait, it couldn't be. Put it. Izuku thought before he sees a little twinkle of pink light on the top of the building. He now knows it was her. It is her. She really took my offer seriously. Does she want to talk now? This really isn't a great time to talk since I've got a chore to do and Eri is with me. Izuku thought. He now had a new issue at hand here. Again, I can't leave her with anyone since they're busy, or I can't trust them, and I can't just leave Eri here alone at home. Plus, I can't just ditch Star Sapphire since I told her to do that, and if she does it again, it could attract attention from the cops. That is if the first one hasn't already. What am I going to do? Izuku thought. He ponders on the issue, and that was when a thought rang through his mind, and it was one that really made the most sense. Wait a minute, I got it. Izuku thought. While he knows that the idea has a big risk to it, he knows it's really the only one he really has at the moment. He looks down at Eri. Eri. Izuku calls to her, making her look up at him. Yes. Is your costume ready? Izuku asks. Eri raises one of her eyebrows at the question but nods. It is, but why are you asking? Is it Christmas yet? Eri asks. Izuku chuckles at her innocent mistake but makes a note on teaching Eri the correct holidays later. It's not when yet and wrong holiday, sweetie. There's a slight change in the plan, Eri. We're going to play Heroes, but for real. Izuku says. Eri beams at the mention of playing Hero. That was her favorite game to play with him. Really? Eri asks. Yep, that flare was shot by someone who wants to talk to see me but as Deku, not Izuku. So I have to go and talk to them. And you're coming along, so wanna wear it? Izuku asks. Eri just nods ecstatically. Yes, yes, yes. Eri yells, bouncing in place. Izuku just smiles and pats her on her head. Alright, let's go and get you dressed and I'll do the same. Izuku says. The two quickly turn around and head back to their house to go and get changed. When they reach the door, Izuku unlocks it and opens it, but before they stepped into the house, Izuku looks back down at Eri. And Eri, there's one more thing you should know. Don't ever take off your mask and don't say our real names. This person doesn't know who we are, and we should leave it that way. Can you do that? Izuku asks. Eri saw that he was serious and nods. Hi, Eri says, and they enter the house and went to their room to get changed into their suits. Location, on top of the Daily Planet building, Metropolis, Delaware, USA. Time, 17:05 p.m. 20 minutes later, Star Sapphire was sitting on the Daily Planet sign, waiting for Deku to arrive. She shot a flare from her ring in hopes he'd see it and realize it was her since she did want to speak to someone and for some reason, she felt that she could go to him. So she did what he asked her to do if she ever wanted to talk, go to the top of the Daily Planet building and fire a shot into the air as a signal and he'll come. Well, she did it and she's been waiting roughly around 20 minutes for him to arrive but no show of him yet. She was starting to get worried. What if he's busy and didn't see the flare? Should I shoot another one? A bigger and brighter one at that. Star Sapphire thought. Nervousness and doubt began to fill her mind, thinking that Deku was not going to show up at all. After 2 more minutes pass, Sapphire sighs and hops off the golden sign, thinking that he wasn't coming. It was stupid to think he'd show up. Why did I even trust him? Star thought, saddened for placing her trust in someone she barely knew. She was about to take off back home when a swish was heard behind her and, Where are you going? She stops upon hearing a familiar voice. She turns and sees Deku standing there, with a large yellow backpack. Why you came? Star mummers, stunned that he came. Yeah, I did. I saw your flare and rushed here. Sorry, I'm late. I was doing something when I saw the flare and I had to do something else quickly before coming here. Deku says he looks at her and sees Star was just looking at him with a shocked expression, right before it slowly turns into one of joy and happiness. You actually came. Star yells, she rushes and gives him a big hug, nearly taking him off his feet with surprising strength one wouldn't expect from someone her size. Yeah. I said I would if you shot a pink thing in the air that day. Did you think I wasn't coming? Deku asks. Sapphire snaps out of her joyful state and realizes what she was doing. She lets go of him and rubs her arm while looking away from him. Why yeah, I sort of assumed that you forgot about the deal and I was about to leave. My bad. Sapphire says, embarrassed while blushing. Deku just looks at her a bit before chuckling and smiles. While he had his eyes closed so that should indicate that he was smiling. It's okay, Deku says. Sapphire was about to say something to him but someone cuts her off from doing so. Oni-chan, are we there yet? A young voice spoke from Deku's bag, in Japanese. Star looks over to Deku's bag and saw it move a bit. What was that? Sapphire asks. Deku realizes what she was looking at and remember his passenger. Oh, right. Deku says he takes his bag off and places it on the floor, and looks at it. You can come out now, we're on the ground now. Deku says. Star was confused about why would he speak to his bag. Suddenly the bag began to move on its own before it opens, and out came a little girl, wearing a costume that looked exactly like Deku's outfit. Well, sort of. While it did look like his suit, there were massive differences. 1. The girl's version looked to be a slightly oversized hoodie and wore it like a dress. 2. She had on black leggings instead of long knee pads like the ones Deku has on, but she did the same shoes he had on, along with the black armor as well, and she had the exact same gloves on too, minus the arm braces. After a while of looking at the girl, Star found her voice and asks, "Who's this?" She asks, pointing to the girl in the Deku costume. She's. Deku was trying to find the right words and explaining just who this was, but the girl beats him to it. I'm Deku-chan, Deku's little sister. Smash. The girl, now known to be Deku-chan, yells while throwing a punch in the air, mimicking Deku's way. Star just looks at Deku-chan for a bit while Deku was starting to just a bit nervous about how she would react in seeing her. He prepares for every possible outcome. She does react soon though, just in a way he wasn't prepared for. She's so adorable. Sapphire yells, she scoops Deku-chan up and starts twirling her around. Oh, who's a cutie? You are, yes you are. She says as she starts tickling Deku-chan, making the little girl laugh. Hey stop it. That tea tickles. Deku-chan laughs, trying to wiggle from Star but the older girl continues to tickle her. Deku lets out a sigh of relief. Well, looks like the plan worked. A little too well. But the results are the same and I'm happy. Deku thought, seeing that his plan worked. After a while, Star sets Deku-chan down and before using her ring and constructs a pink construct of a pony, much to the little girl's delight as she hops onto it, and the pony starts trotting around the roof. Deku smiles at the sight of Iris enjoying herself. He then turns to Star. So, what did you want to talk about? Deku asks, making Star realize why she was here in the first place. Oh, yeah. I almost forgot that's why I came here. Star says she heads to the ledge of the roof and sits on it. She notions Deku to come and sit with her and he does. The two look at the city skyline. So, remember what you said that my relationship with Hal was toxic and that it was really not good for either of us. She says, making Deku think back to their conversation back then. Yeah, I did say something like that. Deku says, well, I stopped messaging Hal on Instagram and Chirper since that day and I even stopped going to his old house and staying in his old room. Star Sapphire says. Deku slowly nods. Okay. Deku says, knowing that it was good progress but the last one did sound creepy, but progress was progress. I then went to the girls I chased away from him when he was there and we were dating and apologized to them about chasing them away from him and saying I assumed they were trying to steal him away from me. They understood and forgave me over it and most of them held no strong feelings for it. Star says, that's good news. Wait, most of them. Deku asks, realizing what she said. Star started getting furred and rubbed her arm. Yeah, some of them are still kind of afraid of me about that. But they still forgave me. Star says, oh, well that's good. Deku says. Star then gains a frown on her face. Yeah. But there's another problem I've started to have. Star says, making Deku look at her with a confused expression. Like what? Deku asks. Well. Ever since I began doing these things, my powers have been glitching and stop working at moments. Star says. This got Deku's mind to work. How so? Deku asks. Well, sometimes like if I'm flying, my powers stop working and I start falling toward the ground before they come back. Or if I make something with them, the thing I make sometimes glitches out or just fades instantly. Star says. Deku places his hand on his chin and thinks for a bit. He then turns to Star. How long has this been happening? Deku asks. Since I've started doing the things I said, start to move on from Hal. Star says. It's obvious the cause of your powers and freaking out is probably linked to you moving on from Jordan. But what? Deku says he begins to think about what could be a possible reason why Sapphire's powers are failing. Suddenly, he remembers what Hal told him about her and her powers on the day they met. Look dude, you know how us Green Lanterns use willpower to power our rings. Well, Star Sapphire is like us but different. See, her Lantern Corp are the Violet Lanterns and they use love to power their rings. I think I know what's the problem. Deku says. Star turns to him. Really, what? What is it? She asks, desperate to hear what could be the cause of all this. Since you've begun to move on from Hal, your love for him has also been fading as well, causing your powers to get weaker. And weaker since your ring, power run on emotions, your love. It's the fuel to your powers and since you're moving on from Hal, that fuel is getting smaller and smaller, until you're left powerless. Deku says. Star's eyes widen since his explanation made a lot of. Oh no. Star says, speechless from hearing that she could be powerless soon. Suddenly, they hear something glitch behind them before a thud. Ouchie. The two hear Deku-chan and they turn to see her on the floor, rubbing her butt. Deku-chan. Deku yells as he nearly said Eri's name but saved himself. He rushes to her and picks her up from the floor, and holds her up. Are you okay? He asks in Japanese, concern on his mask-cladded face. Eri looks up at him and lets out an eye smile. I am fine Oni-chan. Just sad that Mr. Pony had to go. Deku-chan says, in Japanese. I'm so sorry Deku-chan, I didn't know that would happen now. Star says, holding her hands to her in apology and holding her head down. Deku-chan just leans forward and pats the older girl on her head, making her up look and see that Deku-chan was giving her and smile. It's fine Miss Star. Really? Deku-chan says. Star looks at the young girl a bit before smiling, happy that she didn't hold this against her. But that happiness soon changes to sadness, remembering her problems and now her powers were fading away. She sighs and runs her hand through her long hair. Great, first things back home and now I learn my powers are fading away. Star says as if the universe was really trying to cause her more problems. Deku hears her and raises one of his eyebrows at the mention of her home. Wait, things back home. Is everything okay with your family? Deku asks. Star looked nervous, realizing Deku heard her slip up. It's nothing, don't worry about it. Star says, waving her hands at him, hoping that he won't dig into that and thankfully, Deku didn't. She sighs again and sits on the floor. What am I going to do? She asks, looking up toward the sky and seeing the sky was changing colors from blue to orange. Deku sets Deku-chan down and the two sit down. Next to Star. Deku then places his hand onto Sapphire's shoulder, causing the girl to turn toward him. Look, I may not have an answer since I have zero clue about love or romance in general and I have no experience in alien relics up until I came here. But the only thing I can say is that the answer is in you, in your heart. And you just have to listen to it. Once you do that, the answer will be in front of you, as clear in day. Deku says, closing his eyes and smiling. Star just stares at him for a little while. Unbeknownst to her, her cheeks began to have a rosy color on them and she feels embarrassed. She gives him a sheepish smile and turns away. Thanks, Star says, then a vibrating noise rang not too far from Deku's utility belt. He goes to it and pulls out his phone and saw an alarm on it. It wrote, the store is about to close, and upon seeing the message, he panics. Oh crud, the store's gonna close soon. The groceries. Deku shouts, standing up. His shout alters Star as she looks at him, confused. Groceries. What groceries? Star asks. Deku stops his panic mode and turns to her. I have to do grocery shopping. I was going to but I saw your flare. And I just came here instant. Did I interrupt you from doing that? I'm so sorry. Star says, feeling bad that she stopped Deku from his chore. Deku just waves her off. It's fine. But, the store is on the other side of the city, west side metropolis, and it closes in 30 minutes. I'd go and hurry there but I have a passenger with me and I can't go too fast or else I could hurt her along the way, but I have no other way to get there before it closes. What am I going to do? Deku says. He tries to think of a way that he could get to the store on time and safely with Eri. Star started thinking as well before an idea came to her. I could fly you there. Star says. Deku and Deku-chan turns to her. Really? But your powers. What if what happened with Deku-chan and the pony could happen again if you help us? Deku asks, not wanting what happened just moments ago to happen again and onto Eri. Star just lifts her left hand and points to her power ring. If I don't use too much and just make a simple build, they'll be fine. Long enough to get you there at least. Star says. Are you sure? Do you really want to help us like this? Deku asks. Star happily nods. Yeah, I'm sure. After you came here and listened to my issues and even helped me understand what's happening, it's the least I can do for you in return. Star says. Deku saw her generality and he saw she was changing. Now that was progress. Thank you. Deku says. He heads over to Deku-chan and grabs her and they go to his backpack and place her inside it, picks it up and strap it on his back. Once she saw that Deku had Deku-chan secured in his bag, Star points her ring at them and creates a pink construct of a bubble around them and the bubble floats off the ground, with a line connected to the ring. Star glows and she floats off the ground. She looks over herself in the bubble and saw nothing wrong so far. She looks up to the two Dekus. You guys ready? Star asks with the two nodding. Yep, hi. The two say and with that, they took off into the sky. While flying, Deku-chan peeks out of the bag and looks at the skyscrapers they were passing as they just looked like tall blurs, amazing her. Izuku looks up to the sky and sees just how wonderful it looked. It looked incredible, and just being flying over the city felt great, like he was free. Sure, he was inside a bubble while someone else was just doing the work, but he couldn't help but feel free. He hoped he could do this. Sure, jumping over buildings and rooftops at high speed was fun and all, but this beat that by a long stretch. It took just under 3 minutes until they reached the other side of Metropolis, and they reached the store and descend to the ground, but the bubble contrast and the glow around Sapphire starts to fur a bit before suddenly disappearing, causing they to fall to the street. Lucky Deku flips to have his feet face toward and ground, and he catches Sapphire and holds her as they fall, and Deku lands on his feet, creating slightly cracks onto the street. He looks down at Star, seeing she was holding tightly onto his suit, eyes closed, as if she was waiting for her to hit the ground. You okay? Deku asks. His question causes Sapphire to snap out of her state and slowly open her eyes and see that she was okay and in Deku's arms. She looks up and stares into his shadowed, emerald eyes. She blushes and gets off him, dusting and straightening her dress. Why yeah, I'm fine. Are you okay? Sapphire asks. Deku nods. I'm fine. Deku says. He turns back to his bag. Are you alright, Deku-chan? He asks with the bag moving. Deku-chan peeks her head out, and had spiral eyes while her head sways left to right with stars floating above her head. That was fun, Oni-chan. Can we do that again? Deku-chan asks, in a dizzy tone. Deku just shakes his head and laughs to himself as he takes his bag off and sets it on the floor, allowing Deku-chan to get out of it, and he picks her up and picks up his bag. Once she had cleared away her dizziness, she and her older brother turned to Sapphire, and saw she was looking at her ring and frowning at it. CRP, I felt it start to fade. I thought it'd last a bit longer, but guess not. Sapphire says. She lowers her hand and sighs. Deku goes to her and places his hand on her shoulder. It's okay. You got us here and that is what matters. You did a good job, Sapphire, really. Deku says, with a closed-eye smile. Sapphire smiles at his words and felt better. Thank you. Sapphire says. No problem, now come on. We've got some shopping to do. Deku says. The trio start walking toward the store, but along the way, the civilians around the area looked at them with intrigue, curiosity, and confusion. Hey, isn't that the green bunny of Young Justice? Yeah, it is. And is that a little girl with him? Oh, look at how cute she looks. She looks like a mini green bunny. Think it could be his fan and he's hanging out with her for the day. Maybe. Isn't that the girl who trashed the foot field at Metropolis High a couple of weeks ago? Oh yeah, it is. Wonder why she's with Deku and that little girl. Maybe she's been arrested and Deku's taking her to the station. I hope so. She made the game get cancelled and I lost my money since I bet big money on the game. The three hear the mummers of the civilians around them, and while Eri had no clue on what they were saying, the two teens knew what they were saying. Sapphire started to feel bad about her actions during her episode that day, and seeing that it left a pretty nasty impression on the public wasn't doing her current emotional state best, and she started to move to Deku's side and tries to hide from them. Deku's eye twitches at the mention of him as Green Bunny. He really needed a way to say his hero name. He turns to Sapphire and saw what she was doing and saw people looking at her. He moves closer to her and places her under his arm, in a protective manner, which caught her off guard since she is focused on the mummers. Once he did so, everyone stop murmuring, allowing them to quietly walk into the store. Upon seeing them, everyone in the store turned to them and looked at them. But once they saw Deku, they go and ask for autographs, much to his surprise and embarrassment, but he simply asked if he could go as he had grocery shopping to do. The shoppers did allow the young hero and his companions to start the chore. Deku places Deku-chan onto the cart and they began grabbing the items on the cart while Sapphire just followed them, but helped out whenever they needed to get something from the top shelf by using her ring, creating a hand construct and grabbing said item from the shelf and placing it into the cart. After a while of shopping and doing some photo ops due to the fans in the store, and also the clerk who was just staring at Deku and checking his items slowly, they eventually got the task done and the trio left the store with bags in hand. Well, that's that. I got everything on the list and have some change to spare. Deku says, after checking the bags and seeing the items were secured. Yep. Sapphire says she held a bag of her own while Deku-chan just carried a box of cereal. Deku turns to Sapphire. Thanks so much for helping us, it really had the job easier. Deku says. Sapphire just smiles and waves her hand. It's the least I can do. Since you took your time to come and listen to me and my issues, I had to repay you for it. Sapphire says. It was nothing really. That's what friends are for, right? Deku asks. Yeah, you're right. Sapphire says. Insert Ost, Kyoito no Kubu from Boku no Hero Academia. Just before either of them could say another thing, an explosion went off, near them which rocketed the area. The teens and child turned to where the explosion went off and saw a large trail of smoke coursing up in the sky. What was that? Sapphire asks. That sounded like something's happening. Let's go check it out. Deku says. He grabs Deku-chan and places her in his bag as he held onto the bags, and he and Sapphire flew to the location of the explosion. Upon arriving, they see the street was wrecked as civilians were running away from the chaos. There were holes in the road, the light poles were bent, destroyed, or uprooted and laying in the road. The buildings in the street were damaged. What happened here? Sapphire asks. What caused all this? Deku asks, looking and surveying the damage. Watch out. One of the fleeing civilians yells, causing the two to look and see a large semi with a tanker connected to it flying toward them. They barely duck in time as the truck flew by their heads. It hits the ground and rolled a bit before the truck explodes and causes the tanker to get disconnected and had a gash on it, pouring all the gasoline out of it. The wind blew, making our hero's and favorite white-haired child feel the heat from the burning inferno. Who threw that? Sapphire says. Grundy did. A low, deep yet emotionless voice spoke as a large shadow cast over them. The trio look up and see a large man in front of them with gray skin. He also had untidy snow-white hair, just like Yuri had. He wore a dirty, ragged black suit that is unbuttoned, with a black shirt and torn black breath, and he also has large feet with black toenails. Who are you? Deku asks, not recognizing this person. Solomon Grundy. The man, now known to be Solomon Grundy, says. Why are you destroying this street? Deku asks. Solomon just turns his head around, slowly looking at the destruction that was there before he turns back to the heroes. Because Grundy likes to sleep city too loud. Grundy says. So you're just destroying the city just because you want to sleep? Deku asks, confused by his reasons. See, Grundy says in Spanish, thanks to school and Jess slowly teaching him the language. Izuku understood him and he narrows his eyes at the large man. Well, I can't let you do that. Deku says, pulling his glove down as green bioelectricity begins to spark and surge off him, and he shifts into a fighting stance. You try to stop Grundy, Grundy will crush you. Solomon says. He lifts his arms in the air before sending them down to the teen, who jumps away right as he slams down onto the city. Whoa, this guy's strong. Sapphire says. Deku takes his bag off, letting Deku-chan get out of it and move to Sapphire, and he places his bags on the lantern. Star, you protect Deku-chan and our stuff. I'll deal with this guy. Deku says as Sapphire nods, building a bubble around her and Deku-chan, but it glitches a bit before settling down. Deku just cracks his neck before changing at Solomon, who runs toward him as well with a fist raised. Once they met, Grundy tries to punch Deku with his attack, but the green-themed hero ducked from the attack and leaps up, and strikes him with a kick to the chin, which was followed by a spinning roundhouse kick to Grundy's temple, sending him back a bit. Deku lands in front of him and leaps in the air to deliver a Detroit smash when Grundy suddenly grabs him by his head and tosses him down the street, skidding across the ground for a bit until crashing through a storefront. Deku lay there in the rubble for a bit as he slowly sits up, grunting as he does. This guy's really strong. And tough too. When I kicked him in his chin and face, it felt like I was kicking an iron pole. Izuku thought, rubbing his head, and felt his mask was torn in the side of it. Not enough to reveal his hair, but enough to reveal his skin, and see that it was bleeding due to a cut. Just as he was getting out of the rubble and walking out of the storefront, Deku looks up and sees an empty cab flying toward him. Reacting fast, Deku lifts his hand up with his finger already in a fing motion, and the glove's outer layer is out open and shoots out 3 air blasts at the cab, sending it back into the air before landing on the ground. Deku comes out of the storefront and looks for Solomon and sees him charging at him. Deciding to maybe level the field a bit, Deku charges his output to 20%, causing more of the green bioelectricity to surge off him, and he jumps towards Solomon and plants 2 boots into the large man's chest as they soar through the air, and go through an empty bus, and into another building. Grunts, hits, and things were heard from within the building the 2 combatants were in before Solomon comes out, holding a damaged Deku in his right hand by his leg, and starts slamming the hero onto the ground a bit before he tosses Deku across the street, and the hero hits a car and it explodes on impact, taking him with it. Solomon sees the burning car and assumes that Deku was down for the count. Just as he was about to leave and continue his path of destruction, a barrage of pink blasts were shot at him, each one impacting his body with mini explosions, each one causing him to move a little back as the barrage continues. Once it stops, smoke submerged the area where the large man was standing until it dissipated away, revealing Solomon with some injuries, and his already ragged and torn clothing had worsened from the blasts, but he was still standing, and was okay. He turns to where the blast came from and saw Sapphire with Deku-chan hiding behind her as the lantern had a minigun construct pointed at him with the barrel smoking, while she looked to be a bit tired, as if she was straining herself from just making it. He charges at them and Sapphire begins to open fire at the man again, but this time, he was tanking the blast and pushing through them while charging. Seeing that he was getting close and that her attacks weren't working anymore, Sapphire deforms the gun and reformed her bubble shield once he reached them. Solomon starts punching at the bubble shield, each punch causing it to go deep into the ground and causing Sapphire to feel more strain with every punch landing onto the bubble shielding. And to make matters worse, she started to feel the construct crack and glitch again. No, not now. Please, just hold out a bit longer. Sapphire was begging her ring to hold on, but it didn't work as Grundy punches the bubble with a strong slam, and it breaks. Sapphire felt lightheaded and falls to the floor, knocked out. Deku-chan bends down to her and starts shaking her, attempting to wake her up. As Sapphire Nichan, Deku-chan says, continuing to shake the older girl awake, but nothing was working. Grundy just looks at them before raising his arm into the air, preparing to slam it down on them. Goodbye, Grundy says. Deku-chan holds onto Sapphire and closes her eyes as a glow from under her hoodie began to light up and a pulse of aura began to emulate from her and onto Sapphire. Grundy was about to slam his hand down. Hey! A voice shouts behind him. Grundy turns around and was met with a heavy kick to his face. The force of the kick was enough to send him flying back and was sent into the tanker. He emerges from the tanker, covered in gasoline as he looks up and Deku, suit heavily damaged and burnt in some places, barely standing as the leg he used to kick Grundy with was broken, due to the upped power out he used for the kick. Don't you dare touch my sister and friend. Deku grunts out, holding his side, and started to feel his leg begin to wobble before he collapses onto the floor. Grundy just scoffs at Deku before walking over to him and raising his hand in the air again. The light from Yuri's horn stops along with the aura as she felt lightheaded before passing out next to Sapphire. The violet lantern's eyes twitch a bit before they began to slowly open. What happened? Sapphire asks. She gets up and rubs her head trying to clear the cobwebs from her mind before looking down and seeing Deku-chan next to her unconscious. Deku-chan, Sapphire says. She goes to the little girl and picks her head up, checking her to see if she was fine, and found that she only passed out, just as she was about to do something to help Deku-chan. Boom. And dust. A loud boom went off next to Sapphire as she felt rumbling as well as dust filled the area. The wind began to blow by, clearing away the dust. Sapphire looks up and sees Grundy standing tall, and next to her with his fist planted into the ground where a crater formed and something else was in it. Sapphire looks at the crater and saw the dust clear away and revealing what was inside the crater. Her eyes widen in shock and horror at seeing Deku in the crater, broken and defeated. Deku. Sapphire. Grundy crushed puny man. Good. Grundy says. He cracks his neck and starts walking away from them. Sapphire just continues to stare at Deku's body. Deku. Sapphire utters again. This time tears begin to fall from her eyes, and place her head onto his chest and cry in sorrow at seeing her friend in such a state. Her sorrow then begins to turn into anger as she lifts her head and starts to glare at the large man who was walking away from them. Sapphire hisses out, causing Grundy to stop walking and turn back to them and sees Sapphire walk out of the crater. Grundy mummers. Pink flames began to sprout from Sapphire's body as her hair began to float up with pink highlights starting to form on her strands. Her eyes were shadowed by her bangs. Insert Ost, the only thing they fear is you from doom, eternal. Sapphire hisses out. The flames sprouting from her eyes begin to intensify as a dark purple aura begins to form from her ring and spread through her body. Grundy, well what? Grundy asks. That did it. Sapphire snaps her head up to show her eyes were glowing violet with flaming energy coursing from them and the aura erupts her from and into the air, causing high pressure of wind to blow as Grundy was getting pushed back by them. You will pay for this. Sapphire roars as the aura continues to erupt until it all goes back into her body, as the glow emanating from her body had turned deep purple. Just before Grundy could do something, he suddenly gets hit in the chest and is sent flying into the sky, passing many buildings in the process, as Sapphire jets after him. Once she reached him, she creates purple constructs of missile launchers and starts firing a barrage of missiles at the man, each hitting him and creating a large series of explosions over the city. Something shoots out of the sky and starts plummeting to the earth as it crashes into the middle of a street, creating a long deep trench into it until stopping. Rubble covered this until some were moved out of the way to reveal Grundy, but he was severely hurt, his blazer and shirt destroyed, breathe in ruins, and he had burns and cuts on most of his body, but he was healing. He gradually gets up from the trench before he got shot back down into it by a large blast. He groans from the hit and looks up to see Sapphire floating down to him, like a predator stalking its prey as she was staring at him with hatred. She lifts her hand up and creates a series of fists while ready to attack him. She lowers her hand and the fists attack Grundy, burying him deeper into the trench. This went on for several minutes until Sapphire stops the attacks and just stares at Solomon, who was still awake and well from the attacks, but wasn't getting up. She goes to him and grabs him by the throat before lifting him up with surprising strength. She looks at him before jetting up into the sky, passing many clouds until she reached the atmosphere, just enough for Solomon to breathe, but having the air cold and thin to make it difficult to take in. He tries to punch her, but the punch was stopped by a hand construct Sapphire made with her ring, and she makes the construct break his hand, making the man scream out in pain. Just as he screams, he turns and glares at the girl, but she wasn't fazed by it as she glares at him, eyes prominently glowing before she says a few things to him. Go to hell ... and never come back. She hisses out before she tosses Solomon into the air above her as she raises her hand up to him and points her ring to him with it glowing. For hearts long lost and full of fright, for those alone in blackest night, accept our ring and join our fight. Love conquers all. With violet light. Sapphire shouts her oath with a large beam of violet light shooting out from the ring and hitting Grundy in full force as he climbs higher and higher into the outer atmosphere, until she stops the beam and lets Grundy fall down to earth as he catches fire. End Ost at 2:19. Sapphire looks at the shirking of flames go down back to earth as she sighs, and the dark purple aura fades away, turning back to her normal shade of violet. The pink highlights in her hair fade away as well, and the flames dissipate. She felt a bit tired and lightheaded, but all right. She opens her eyes once more, realizing something, and she shoots down back to earth, heading toward Metropolis, and reaching the city and back to the street where Grundy originally attacked. She floats down and spots the downed and injured Deku next to the still unconscious Deku-chan. Sapphire lands next to them and scans Deku-chan first with her ring to see if she was alright. Much to her relief, she was about to wake up. She turns to Deku and scans him, and her heart fell. The scan showed he had sustained internal injuries, 12 heavily cracked ribs and 8 broken ones, 2 of which had pierced his left lung, causing it to collapse on itself. One of his kidneys was ruptured, the humerus, ulna, and radius, and his arms were broken in several places, and his right leg fibula and tibia were also broken in 3 places, and he had a grade 3 concussion. But the thing that caused Sapphire to be heartbroken was that due to the intense injury due onto his chest, his heart had sustained heavy damage and it was beeping slow, with each beep getting slower and slower. Deku, Sapphire utters, tears beginning to form in her eyes as the ring displayed a th thump, th thump, th thump, th. After the last beat, there was nothing at all. No beep, no nothing. The tears from Sapphire's eyes fell from them as she saw on the display a flat line. She knew what it meant. Deku's heart had stopped and he had died. Deku, Sapphire cries into his chest, saddened as his heart stopped. Her cries and sob caused Deku-chan's eyes twitched a bit as her body moved as she began to stir. She slowly opened her eyes and slowly sat up. She hears the cries and turns to the source to see Sapphire kneeling towards someone. She takes a closer look and her eyes widen in shock at seeing her older brother laying in a crater lifeless. "Oh, Onii-chan." Deku-chan utters in shock, but the shock goes away as she springs from her position and goes into the crate, and falls onto Deku's chest. Onii-chan. She yells and starts to shake him, trying to wake him up. Sapphire looks up after hearing yelling and sees Deku-chan on Deku's chest, shaking him. She cries and felt pity and sadness for the little girl for her loss. She gently places her hand on Deku-chan's shoulder, making the little girl turn to her. "Deku-chan, I'm so sorry but he's gone." Sapphire says. Deku-chan looks at her in shock. She started to shake her head in denial. "No, and no, you're lying. Onii-chan isn't gone, he's here. He's just asleep and hurt, but he's okay. He has to be, right Onii-chan?" Deku-chan looked back down at Deku, hoping that he was just sleeping, but she got no response from him. "Right Onii-chan?" She asks again, and nothing came from Deku. Deku-chan starts to get distorted and scared as she starts to shake Deku again and attempting to wake him up, but nothing was working. Tears began to fill her eyes along with dread and fear of the worst. She was a smart girl and knew what Sapphire meant, but she was just a child who just started receiving love after being denied by it for so long. "Onii-chan." Deku-chan sobs as she looks down at Deku and her tears begin to fall. She places her head on his chest and lays there, holding onto the body of her fallen brother. Suddenly her horn glows once more, but this time, it lets out a massive flash in the area, and once it had dissipated. "Oh, crud." The two girls jump at a shout and saw Deku shoot up. His injuries from before had all disappeared with no indication of them ever being there. He was taking deep breaths as sweat began to form on his head where his skin was exposed. He suddenly felt a massive headache coming, forcing him to grab onto his head and rub it. My head. He groans, before he could do anything else. "Deku, Onii-chan." The two girls yell as they tackled him to the ground and hold onto him, crying loudly as they both held onto him, scared that if they were to let go, he'd disappear from them. Deku looks down and sees them. Theory. Deku utters, confusion written across his face. "Onii-chan, please don't go away from me." Deku-chan yells, tears continuing to fall as she leaps up to his neck and wraps her arms around it. "I thought I lost you." Sapphire cries out, holding onto him. What do you mean?" Deku asks. Sapphire just looks up at him, new tears falling from her eyes. You died," Sapphire slowly says. Deku froze and his eyes widened in shock. I died." Deku yells, in shock at hearing that he had died. "Why yes, but only for a minute. Then a flash happened and you were okay and alive again after Deku-chan placed her head onto you." Sapphire says. "A flash and Deku-chan." Deku utters as he thinks over what Sapphire said until he remembers something about Eri. Her quirk did this and saved him. He looks at Eri in shock and amazement. "Your quirk?" "Emoto-chan, your quirk rewind my body from how it was before Grundy attacked the city. Your quirk saved my life again." Deku says as he hugs her back. "Thank you." Deku-chan pulls away from the hug and looks at him into his eyes. "I didn't want you to leave me and Mama. You're my Onii-chan and I want you to stay with me forever. I love you, Onii-chan." Deku-chan says, pulling her mask down and embrace Izuku on his forehead. Deku smiles under his mask and pulls Eri back into the hug. I love you too. Deku says. The two siblings just stayed there, hugging one another while Sapphire just looks at smiling at the love they had for each other as she wipes her tears away. Deku opens his eyes again as he realized about Grundy. Grundy, where is he? Deku yells, standing up, holding Eri in his arms, and starts scanning for any sign of the villain that had killed him but saw no sign of him. Sapphire saw him and just went to him and placed her hand on his shoulder. Oh, don't worry about him. I dealt with him and sent him packing. I doubt we'll be seeing him for a long time. Why you beat him? But how? Weren't your powers failing earlier? Deku asks. Sapphire just shrugs her shoulders. She had no idea what caused her powers to return in full force. I don't know. 1 minute they were failing, but after I saw you laying on the floor lifeless, I snapped and anger filled my mind, and the next thing I know, I'm supercharged and beating the heck out of that jerk. Sapphire says, really unsure how her powers came back. Deku thought about her words and what could be the reason for the supercharge when he remembers something Hal said. Green Lanterns use willpower to power our rings. Well, Star Sapphire is like us but different. See, her Lantern Corp are the Violent Lanterns and they use love to power their rings. Do you think it was your rage? Deku asks. Sapphire looks at him. She utters. Do you think it could have been your rage that caused your powers to not only return but get supercharged? Do you think that your anger triggered a reaction from your ring? Deku asks. Sapphire took in his words and thought them over. Maybe ... but that wouldn't make any sense since my corp uses love, not anger. There's another corp for that. Sapphire says as Deku nods. True, but what if love is just the primary source of your powers? What if you had a secondary emotion source that powers your ring? I don't know. Sapphire says she was now really interested in what were her powers and what was the real source of the ring. Let's forget about that for now. But what is important is that your powers are back. Deku says, making Sapphire realize that they were back. Yeah, you're right. They are back. Sapphire says she starts to float up and soar in the air while blasting a few beams of light from her ring, showing that everything was working again. She floats back to down Earth beside them. It feels good to have them back. She says, feeling a lot better than she was earlier that day. She hugs Deku, surprising him, but he returns it with one arm. Thank you for helping me out. And, sorry for ... with Grundy in. Sapphire says, feeling awkward about mentioning Grundy and ... what happened earlier. Luckily, Deku felt the same. Yeah, not my finest moment, but at least I'm back and fine. And thanks to you that the day was saved. You're a hero today. Deku says. Really? Sapphire says. Deku nods and she realizes that she did save the day by stopping Solomon, like a hero. She felt happy and light at this. She looks at the sky and saw the sun was about to disappear from the horizon. She knew she had to go home now, knowing that her parents have been notified that she skipped school again by now. She pulls away from the hug and looks at Izuku. Well, I guess I should head back home. I live in Coast City and that's a pretty far trip. It'll take me a while to get back. Sapphire says. I see. Deku says, understanding her well. I ever see you again? Deku asks. Sapphire smiles and just shrugs. Who knows? You'll never know. We might meet again sooner than expected. Sapphire says. Deku nods, knowing what she meant. Yeah, you're right. If you need to talk again, I'll be watching. Let's just promise that the next one isn't going to be as painful and scary as this one. Deku says, causing Sapphire to giggle. Sure, no problem. Sapphire says. She starts to float back up into the air and was about to leave, but not before she turns back to Deku and smiles at him. Bye, Deku. She says, waving her hand at him. He sees this and waves back, along with Eri. Bye, Star Sapphire. Deku says. Sapphire stops waving and turns back to the sky and jets away, disappearing into the sky and leaving a bright purple star in the air. Izuku and Eri look at this star and sigh, knowing that things had calmed down and the chaos had finally ended. Deku. Izuku flinches at hearing 6 voices coming from behind. He turns and he and Eri see the girls of Young Justice heading toward him, in their hero outfits and expressions of worry, most likely due to his state and the state of the road. Oh, hi girls. I can explain. Izuku says, nervously, since he felt this was going to be a long night. Location, Fort Mercy Military Base, Nevada, USA. Time, 18:25 p.m. Hey, have you checked this video out? A soldier asks, holding a phone in her hands to another soldier who was with her as they hung out by the rest area in a hangar that had gym equipment. What video? The other soldier asks. The first, more solid, just show them the video on her phone, and it was a video of Young Justice's battle with Lena Luthor and her robo-army. I know, these kids are good. Man, makes me feel better that we're getting more and more heroes on the rise since we've only had that Bat guy in Gotham. And Superman. The woman soldier says, looking at the video. The second soldier looks at the first one with a raised eyebrow. I don't know. I mean, haven't you heard what's been happening to Japan since April? The villains there are getting bolder since All Might retired. The second one says, whatever, as long we've got Superman and those kids out there, I feel safe. Well, safer. The woman soldier says, you can't forget our own little star here. The second soldier says, pointing to his left. Oh yeah, I forgot she's here as well. the woman soldier says. She turns to her left and spots the person in question working out by lifting a large dumbbell in a deadlift. Yo bait, come here. The soldier calls this woman, causing her to turn to them, see that they were gesturing to her to come to them, and make her drop the dumbbell to the floor. She picks up a towel from a rack and walks over to the three soldiers, wiping the sweat from her forehead. What's up, guys? Spoke a tall woman with a well-muscled build. She had elegant facial features, narrow eyes, and long flowing blonde hair with 8 distinct tufts swept backward fashioned in a similar manner to a certain pro-hero in Japan. She wore a simple black tank top, black gym shorts with white trimmings on the side, and red and white trainers. Check this out. The first solider says she shows the video to this woman as she watches it with interest and intrigue. Oh, we've got new heroes. And the majority of them are girls. That's great. This world could definitely need more female heroes. Ones who do their jobs instead of being models like some of those pros in Japan. She says with a hidden tone of distaste. She hated how Japan treated their heroes like celebrates and actually paid them to be heroes. So, people treat heroes in America the same, but they don't let it get to their heads. They work there the danger and save those in need, and they don't ask for anything else in return, especially money. Yeah, but check this kid out. The second soldier says, pointing to Deku on the video as he kicks Lena's bot back to the ground at high power. His kick was impressive and powerful, don't you think? The soldier asks the woman, who just nods her head. Yeah, it was, the woman says. She continues to stare at Deku in the video as she scans him and sees something familiar about him. His kick ... it had the same power that All Might had back in his heyday, but I can see that it was held back. This kid ... he's even got the same flair All Might had. Just who is this kid? The woman thought. Where was this video was taken and when? The video was taken in Metropolis and it was taken in August, I think. Superman's town, huh? I think I might go and take a vacation there, the woman says. She had made up her mind. She straightens up and starts walking out of the hangar toward the barracks to gather her things. Maverick. Prep a hawk for Metropolis in T-3 hours. I'm taking my mandated vacation time there, the woman says, passing a man who was by an F-14 fighter jet. Sure. Okay, a man says, the woman thought. I hope you're ready, kid, 'cause I'm coming to City of Tomorrow to find you and see how you're connected to MSDR. This woman thought. A week and a half has passed since the events of the last chapter in Metropolis, and its citizens, as the weather, while still warm, was cooling down to chiller winter as the seasons were changing. And things have gone back to normal as normal can possibly be in the City of Tomorrow. Well, that mostly applies toward the ordinary citizens of the city. For our hero, well, Izuku was walking down the hallway at school, looking rather nervous and sheepish. And for good reason too. Diana, is this really necessary? Izuku asks, looking around his personal space and seeing his Amazon friend were walking rather close with him. Yes, the girl just says, moving ever closer to Izuku, causing his blush to gain a deeper shade of red. The reason why Diana were doing this was that she and the other girls found out what exactly happened to the distract Izuku and Solomon fought it, and also what really happened to him thanks to Eri telling them when they asked her upon seeing her in her hero getup. When they learned that Izuku was severely injured and later died, despite for only a minute, and getting revived quickly via rewind, had forced the girls to be near Izuku at all available times. Example, during classes or study hall, during school hours, during their free time, during patrols around the city, and even check up on him while he was home. This being done by Babs, Karen, and even Kara surprisingly. Izuku sighs, seeing that they weren't going to let up anytime soon. Well ... then again, they did found the whole distract smashed to pieces and saw how I was and I did die. So, I guess that this is a normal reason. I think, Izuku thought. He looks around the hallway and noticed the majority of the students looking around, having rather nervous and tense expressions, as if they were expecting something to happen. Hey, have any of you been noticing weird things going on around school? Izuku asks. Diana look around and see the students and their expressions. Yeah, now that you've mentioned it, I have noticed unusual behaviors from our peers. I wonder what is the case of this behavior. Diana says with Izuku nodding along. I'd like to know that too. He says. Eventually, they find their friends by their lockers, gathered up while laughing, giggling at something. Greeting sisters, hi girls. The two greet. Hey, hello, hi, sup. The others greet back. Izuku notices Kara was holding her phone, perhaps showing the others something, and that could the cause of them laughing. What are you watching? Izuku asks. Kara turns to him and Diana. Just Gar having a moment with a starfish. Kara says she shows the two a video of Gar, one of Izuku's male friends, trying to dissect a starfish for his biology project, much to the boy's displeasure as it was evident in the video. He was about to do it when the seemingly dead starfish jumped off the table and latching onto Gar's face, causing him to fall to the floor and laying there in a defeated pose. The video ended with the tag, #RiseOfStarro. The girls laugh again as the video ends while Izuku and Diana both frown. Isn't that hilarious? Barbara asks, laughing at the video again with the other, but Izuku and Diana weren't laughing at all. That's not funny, Izuku says, making the girls stop laughing and look at him with confused expression. What do you mean? Kara asks. It's not nice to laugh at someone's misfortune. It's mean and insensitive. It hurts the person's feelings. I've seen plenty of videos that have embarrassing moments in them, but I only laugh when it happened by accident. Not this. This is just plain mean. Izuku says, crossing his arms and having an expression of disappointment on his face, but there was something else there with the disappointment, just not being readable. I agree, I don't find this humorous as you all. Why laugh at one's misfortune? Diana asks. Relax you guys, it's just an embarrassing moment. We've all had them. Z says. Diana nods, knowing this well but felt the same. But still, we are still mocked and ridiculed by them. Mankind is better than this. Diana says. Hey look, it's Lois Lame. A boy yells, pointing in the direction of the hallways where a girl was angrily walking past the other laughing students as she was carrying a stack of papers in her arms. She was the first victim to these incidents and was the laughing stock of the school due to the incident getting posted on social media for everyone to see. She had a fair complexion and curvy pear-shaped body, long black hair, and purple eyes. Her black hair was kept in a messy bun with some pencils sticking out, holding the bun in place while a pair of pink glasses were on top of her head. She has pink glasses above and wears an oversized wheat-colored cardigan over an untucked white shirt, and was sporting dark blue breathe and black flats. Her name was Lois Lane, lead reporter and head editor for the school's journalism club. Just as she was walking down the hall, trying to ignore everyone laughing her, she spots someone leaning against the lockers to where she was going, the journalism club room, Leslie Willis, one of Karen's former bullies. The two met eyes as Lois passes Leslie, who wanted to make Lois's day worse. Hey Lois, bet you wish you had that gossip column now. Leslie asks, smirking at Lois, who just scoffs and rolls her eyes. The reporter goes into her cardigan pocket and pulls out a set of keys and unlocks the door to the clubroom. Just as she grabs the doorknob, she's suddenly electrocuted by the doorknob and drops to the floor, along with the papers she had with her. She recovers from the shock and sees everyone in the hall were laughing at her harder than before from seeing her getting electrocuted, and she looks down while picking her papers up. Diana and Izuku sees this and were concerned about her, and hearing some snickering behind them, they turn and see their friends were barely holding in their laughs. They see the two looking at them with scolding expression and they stop snickering and look the other way, whistling or was simply trying to hide their faces in Karen's case. The two look at them for a bit before hearing the laughing continuing as they sigh and turn back to Lois, seeing that she was still picking up her papers while looking depression and on the verge of crying. The two look at one another and nod before turning back to Lois and walk toward her. While laughing, the other students were still laughing, which annoyed the two to the point where Izuku had enough. All right, Izuku shouts, causing everyone to stop laughing and turn to him and see him looking annoyed and cross. He looks at everyone with narrow eyes, green eyes going toxic green. Break it up now, don't you guys have somewhere to be? He asks, crossing his arms. Everyone look at him for a bit before they start to disperse from the hall and to where they were needed. Izuku and Diana sigh in relief that the laughing was over and head over to Lois. She was still picking the papers up, and when she was about to pick one up, a scarred hand does it for her. Surprised, she looks up and sees the two looking at her, smiling. Do you need help with these? Diana asks. Lois blinks a bit before snapping out of it and looks at them. No, it's fine, Lois says, putting on a brave face, but the two knew what she was doing. Izuku places his hand onto Lois's shoulder and makes her look at him. Hey, it's okay to ask for help. We're humans, not robots, Izuku says, smiling at her. Lois looks at them for a bit before she looks down. Yes please, Lois says in a small voice. The two just smile and help gather her things and walk her to her office. Once at the door, they handed the papers to them. Thank you guys for helping with the papers ... and the laughing. Lois says. No, it was nothing. Just one fellow person helping another who was in need of help. Yeah, it was no problem. Izuku says. I'm Lois Lane, head editor of the Daily Planetoid. Lois says, smiling at the two as she holds her hand out to them. I am Diana Prince, from the Greece. Yes, I am from Greece, ha ha ha. Diana says, sheepishly laughing as she takes Lois's hand and shakes it. And I'm Izuku Midoriya, from Japan. Izuku says, bowing to Lois. Lois looks at them, remembering something about two foreign students at this school that both broke a record of a test with the same score of 102%. Oh, you're the two foreign students I've heard about. Nice to finally meet ya, Lois says. It's nice to formally meet you, and I read your paper on Superman. It was pretty good, considering you went over his heroics in the city. Izuku says, making Lois look at him with interest. Oh really? You did huh? Lois says and sees Izuku nod. Yeah, you went over his acts at saving people from that fire at the apartment complex on Johnson Ave, but you didn't say on how he was using his other powers beside his freeze breath to save the trapped people in the building before putting out the blaze. Izuku says this catches Lois off guard, not expecting to hear that from him since no one really looks into deep on scenes or incidents that involves heroes. Wow, sounds like you know your stuff there, kid. Lois says. Izuku just smiles and shrugs his shoulders. Well, I take looking at heroes as a hobby of mine. I look into detail at anything related with heroes, Izuku says. Lois looked intrigued at that. Oh really? Lois says, having her hand on her chin as she looks at Izuku. Say, why don't you come by the office and we'll discuss this more? She says, making Izuku at her. I'll try and see if I can. Izuku says, just then, the bell goes off, signal that the first class was starting. Oh, that's the bell. We've got to get to class. Bye. He yells, waving goodbye as he and Diana take off running down the hall to their class. See ya, you two. Lois yells, waving at them as they leave. Once they were gone, Lois turns to her door and opens it, and just as she was about to enter the office, she turns back to where Izuku and Diana had run off before turning around and enters the office. Location, Metropolis Mall, Metropolis, Delaware, USA. Time skip, 16:05 p.m. Later that day, we find Izuku and Diana at the mall. They were there because Izuku was sent by his mother to go and buy some new shoes for her field trip and her class were going on later in the month, while Diana had come along to return some shoes she had purchased a week ago, but something happened to them. While they were riding on the escalator, Izuku had his phone out and was watching the videos that with the pranks as he notices something with the videos. Izuku hums, frowning as Diana turns to him and sees his expression. Is something the matter, Izuku? Diana asks. These videos. Something's wrong with them. Izuku says, his frown deepens while rewinding one of the videos. What do you mean, Izuku? What are wrong with these videos? Diana asks. Izuku stops the videos and holds his phone out to her. What I mean is that every one of the victims in the involved with something involving. In Barbie's video, she walks into an automated door, which was open right as she was about to exit the building but suddenly closes just as she was about to go through it. Or how Garth's phone suddenly shocks him just as he was about to cut that starfish. A phone isn't supposed to do something like that, even if it was plugged to a charger. Izuku says. Diana actually listens to what he said and ponders on this. So, do you believe that someone could be orchestrating these incidents upon others for their gain? Diana asks. Maybe, but without any solid proof. It's just a theory I have. Izuku says. He sighs and puts his phone back into his pocket. Perhaps, if we were continue looking at these videos, we will learn something from them and perhaps find the fiend behind them. Diana says with Izuku putting his hand onto his chin. Yeah. Izuku says, as they reach the top of the escalator and step off it and start walking to the shoe department for the shoes. They were unaware that someone else had stepped off the escalator not long after them, as this person was walking through the mall, looking for something good. It was Leslie and she had her phone out, looking for footage for her channel. Alright, time to look for some footage, Leslie says. She walks around for a little bit, searching for anything that was content-worthy as she looks up ahead for she and spots the money shot. She sees a bunch of people inside of an elevator going up the many levels of the mall. And I think I just found the jackpot, she says, holding out her left hand as sudden arcs of electricity start to shrug off it before walking toward the elevator. In the shoe department, Diana was talking to the store clerk. The warrant stated that these would withstand vigorous activity. Diana tells the clerk, holding out her shoebox. But these couldn't withstand infant training, she says as she places the box onto the counter and takes one of the shoes, which was a red high heel ... or what was left of one, since the one Diana was holding was in ruins. Izuku was by a section of heavy-duty boots, looking of a pair of pink unicorn ones for his sister. Just then, he hears a loud commotion outside of the store. He peeks his head through the storefront window and sees what was happening. He sees everyone on the floor looking up in fright as the elevator was stuck and was smoking, slowly moving bit by bit as the brakes were barely holding it in place. Izuku's eyes widen in seeing this and rushes to Diana, who was talking to the board clerk. And furthermore, Diana was talking to the clerk, but she gets cut off by Izuku when he placed his hand onto her mouth. He looks at the surprised clerk with a sheepish smile. We'll be right back for those shoes. Just need to go to the ATM to get the money. See you in a bit, Izuku yells before quickly exiting the store, dragging Diana along. Izuku, what is the matter? Diana asks. Izuku stops and just points toward the elevator. Diana follows where he was pointing and sees the elevator and saw the brakes were fading. Diana's eyes widen a bit before hardening as she turns to Izuku, and the two nods and rush off somewhere. The people in the elevator were holding on to one another as they hear the brake strain, trying to hit the elevator in place, but to their horror, the brake give out and it starts to fall to the ground floor. Everyone below watch in fright and horror at the scene, while Leslie was just grinning, holding her phone out and recording the scene. Loving the angel, but a golden lasso soar above them and wrap around the top of the elevator, causing it to start slowing down. The crowd turn to where the lasso was thrown and see Wonder Woman pulling on the lasso as she uses her incredible strength to slow it down. And just as it was about to reach the floor, a green blur rushes toward it and stop at the bottom as Deku waits at the bottom of it and catches the lift with his arms. Seeing that Deku had it, Wonder Woman lets go at the lift and lets him hold it a bit as he slowly moves out of the way and sets the lift down gently to the floor. Once it was on the floor, Deku pries the door open. Is everyone alright? Deku asks as the people in the lift nod and rush out of what would have been their tomb as some more embrace the floor while the rest just thanks the two heroes. Wonder Woman retracts her lasso and the crowd cheers, with the two heroes just smiling and waving at them. Out of the way, a voice yells as Leslie stands in front of the crowd and in front of the two. What's the hell? You two ruined my shot, she yells, glaring at them. Your shot. Deku utters before it CS in his mind on what she meant. She was behind this incident. Wait, you were the one behind this. He yells. Wonder Woman was thinking the same as she sees a phone in Leslie's hand. And you must be the one who were behind those videos that have been circling through Metropolis High. Wonder Woman says, placing her hands on her hips. Yeah, that was me. So what for it? Leslie says nonchalantly while raising an eyebrow and crossing her arms. Contrary to what you may think, I believe that you interweb theatrical comedy is in fact a tragedy, and mean in mind and spirit. Wonder Woman says, looking at Leslie with a stern look. Yeah, it's in causing people get hurt or humiliated just so you can benefit from it and laugh. You almost caused people to get killed today due to your actions. What would you have done if we didn't save the people in time and you killed them? Would the families of the victims feel in knowing that you caused this just for a stupid video? How would your parents feel when they learn that their daughter is a murderer? Deku asks, glaring at the punk as the crowd around them start booing Leslie for her action. Leslie was gritting her teeth at the booing as she didn't like people booing or making fun of her, but she did think about what was said and she did feel bad about nearly killing a bunch of people just for a video. She had this look of shame on her as she looks down to the floor. Oh wow guess I really hadn't thought about that. Leslie says in a small voice, rubbing her arm. Yes, you didn't. And thanks to that thinking, there would have been serious consequences from it. Deku says, crossing his arms. I'm sorry for what I've done. Leslie says, it is not us that you should be apologizing to. Wonder Woman says, but she sees Leslie lowering her head further down to the floor. But, since you are showing genuine remorse for what you've done, we will take your apology, she says, right after you take down those videos you have on your channel. They really hurt a lot of people's feelings. Deku says as Leslie looks up at them and nods. I will do it. Leslie says she looks determined on fixing these wrong. We hope so, Wonder Woman says as the two heroes take their leave from the area. Location, Beecher Household, East Side Metropolis, Delaware, USA. Timeskip, 18:07 p.m. The scene changes to Karen's house in the East Side district of Metropolis, and we find all of Young Justice in the youngest member's room. Much to the embarrassment of the short girl, as she not only had girls in her room but she also had a boy in her room. Her parents were teasing her on that while Izuku was blushing, trying not to see anything that was private of Karen's. We saw that you guys saved those people in the elevator at the mall earlier. Jess says, sitting on the bed is the. Yes, we did save the people in the elevator and we found that it was Leslie was the one behind those videos. Izuku says, catching the others by surprise. Really? Z asks. Yep, we got her to think about what she's done and she did feel regret from it. We even convinced her to delete the videos. Diana says, wow, that's great. Now that's good news. Maybe then, everyone will lay off the victims at school and things could go back to normal. Babs says, we can only hope so. Izuku says, hoping that their words did reach to the punk. Speaking of Leslie, she's live streaming right now. Karen says, causing everyone to move to the desk where she was with her laptop as the screen had a live stream of Leslie in her studio, sitting on the desk. Hi everyone out there in Leslie land. Tonight, I've got a special announcement to make. Earlier today, I nearly caused people to lose their lives for a video, but 2 people stopped my actions and saved the day. Those 2 people pointed out to me that my channel is mean-spirited and insensitive to those I've exploited for my own selfish greed. And so, for that, I've not only taken down all the videos about the pranks and gossip, but I have this to say. I'd like to apologize to all those I have hurt for the videos, both at school and at the mall, and that I am officially retiring from doing videos, the ones I have. I will no longer use this channel again. Leslie says as she gets up from her hair and walks off the set. Wow, looks like your words right got to her. Jess says as Izuku and Diana nod. Yes, it has. Diana says, feeling proud that she helped someone see the error in their ways. But that was cut short as Leslie pops her head back onto the screen, which leads me to hand over this channel to new management. Leslie says, smirking, which catches everyone off guard. Wait, what? Izuku utters. He and the girls were surprised by this. I would like to introduce to you all your new host. Leslie yells. Outside, in the city, clouds begin to form in the formerly clear night sky as lighting begun to surge through them, causing the power in most of the city buildings to fur a bit before a single lightning strike hit a building just outside the city, and into a studio where someone new appears there. What up, Metropolis? This new person says. They were a young woman who had light blue skin. Her hair was various shades of illuminating electric blue that was styled into a mohawk with a single bang out, but in the style of a bolt. She wore a black and blue bodysuit with it showing her thighs and arms, as she also black-blue spiked boots, and glowing blue gloves with vampire-like teeth. The name's Livewire. And you thought what Leslie was doing was mean in spirit. Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. I'm gonna soup things up. As in, super prank, super laughs, and super humiliation. And Wonder Whiner, Lameku, and the rest of Young Justice, just try and stop me. The person, now to be as Livewire, laughs as she shoots out a large amount of electricity at her camera, causing it to not only short it out but also completely frying Karen's laptop. The teens watch the laptop let out smoke and some sparks in shock at what they just watched. That don't go the way I had expected for it to go. Diana lets out, finding her composure after a little bit. Yeah, Izuku says, slowly nodding. Kara realizes something and lets out a laugh. Hi, seriously, Miss Shockjock thinks she can scare us. Now, that's funny, Kara says, wiping away a tear as the others look at her and realizes that she was right. There were 7 of them, and only 1 livewire. They had the numbers. Yeah, I mean, what can she do against us? Z asks, laughing, which sparks the others to laugh as well, as they process and leaving the room to go grab a bite from Karen's kitchen. Diana and Izuku remain at the desk as they weren't convinced by this, as Diana just watches the others leave while Izuku turns to the destroyed laptop and narrows his eyes at it, feeling something was wrong. Insert music, Blitzkrieg Bop by the Ramones. The following day was met with danger as Livewire was all over the metropolis, wreaking havoc onto the city, but members of Young Justice were there to stop her. Supergirl was the first to encounter the electric villain on a busy street. Livewire draws from power from the nearby light poles and blasts an electric at the blonde Kryptonian, who takes the blast at full force and is unfazed by it, smirking at Livewire. The villain gets a bit frustrated by this and draws even more energy from the nearby cinema, empowering her further and blasts the power at Supergirl. The Kryptonian tanks the blast the best she could, but it wasn't enough as the blast shoots her backwards and collides into the back of an open trash truck, rendering her dizzy and covered in trash as everyone there was laughing at her while taking photos of her loss. The next one to encounter the villain was Green Lantern, as the villain tries to blast her with an electric shock, but the Lantern quickly counters the attack with a large tire construct, countering the attack. Seeing that the tire would block anything she'd send to the Lantern, Livewire changes her tactics by going into the light poles, making Green Lantern drop the construct and look around for her, which proved to be a fatal mistake as the villain traveled from light pole to light pole until she was behind the hero, and shoots into a bystander's phone and shoots at her, grabbing the phone in the process as she blasts GL at her back, sending her flying and in shock as she lies on the ground, twitching a bit from the shock while dizzy as everyone, including Livewire, laugh and takes pictures. Livewire moves to the park in central Metropolis where a crowd was cheering her on her arrival, but that got interrupted by Zatanna as she arrives in her usually style with magic. The electric villain notices that Zatanna was standing right on some spilled soda, which gave the villain a sinister idea. She sees the hero was busy waving at the crowd and she just points out her finger, aiming at the soda, and shoots a small electric blast to it, with it hitting the soda and shocks Zatanna, with a small amount to not cause her to pass out but to make her elegant violet hair to frizzy out everywhere, making the entire crowd to laugh at her while taking photo as the magician just blushes embarrassed and vanishes away. The 4th member of Young Justice to confront Livewire was Batgirl, but she wasn't even going to her as she was responding to a distress call somewhere else in the city. She was on her Bat moped, heading to the distress call when Livewire had spotted her in the skies. Gaining an idea, Livewire hops from light pole to light pole, catching up to the Bat-themed heroine before entering into the moped, which Batgirl notices right as it stops and sends her flying off it and onto the ground. Batgirl gets up and rubs her head as she hears revving behind her, prompting her to turn, and sees her bike performing a wheelie on its own as it starts to chase her down the road, causing everyone on the sidewalk to pull out their phone and record this while laughing at Batgirl, who gets embarrassed and uses her grappling hook to escape. The last one to encounter the villain was Bumblebee. She was giving chase of Livewire through the city until they stop at an intersection in the middle of the entertainment district of the city. Bumblebee grows back to her normal size in the intersection and looks around for Livewire as she sees the electric villain wasn't around, not noticing a large surge of power above right as it shoots into her suit, causing the short out, shocking Karen for a bit before the shock stops and the suit starts to dance on its own, forcing Karen to do the same against her, while as everyone on the intersection starts to laugh and pull out their phone once more. Seeing her job was done, Livewire exits Bumblebee's suit, leaving the poor girl to drop to the floor and start crying as she leaves, perhaps back to her studio to begin the editing for the videos and pictures of the day's events. End music. The next day, Friday. Time skip, 16:53 p.m. Location, Karen's room, Beecher household, East Side Metropolis, Delaware, USA. We return once again back in Karen's house where the mood was summer. The ones who fought and failed against Livewire were down in the dumps, feeling embarrassed at their defeats. These are the best videos, YJ are the worst. Barbara yells, reading the comments on one of the videos of the previous day's events. She had an ice pack tied to the side of her head where a large bruise was. The others were with her by the desk. Diana is the only one who looked normal and fine, while Kara was still covered in trash. Z's hair was still frizzled. And where were Jess and Karen, you're asking? Well, Babs scrolls down to Bumblebee's humiliating dance and reads one of the top comments. Funniest Bumblebee video ever. Babs yells. The 4 in the room start hear muffled crying on the other side of the room, causing them to turn to the source and see Jess and Izuku by Karen's closet, looking concerned as they listen Karen cry. And I'm never ever coming out again. Ever. Karen cries. Don't say that, Karen. Everything is going to be fine. Izuku says, trying to peek through the gaps on the closet door to see Karen and reassure that everyone will be fine. Yeah, it's not even that bad. Jess says, while trying to ensure to Karen that would be fine in the end. Suddenly, an alert goes off on Karen's laptop, causing the ones out in the room to turn and see a new video notification was up for Livewire. Babs goes to the video and sees on it. What up, Metropolis? Livewire here, sending out a big invite to all my Shocketeers. I'm calling out the last two heroes from Young Justice, the little green bunny known as Lameku and Wonder Wimp. Livewire says before she mockingly GG at their names before she composes herself and faces the camera tomorrow night, midnight, at Glenmorgan Square. Be there to see my most electric performance yet. And Young Justice, especially you two, will you show up and just shocked like your buddies? Or will you be chicken and not show up at all? She asks with a smirk as the video ends with a gif of her shooting Green Lantern in the back, causing Jess to fur at the reminder of her loss. Suddenly Diana lets out a laugh. Haha, Livewire dares issue a challenge to us. Now, that is funny. Tell me I am right. Diana asks, smiling while looking at everyone as they looked uncertain. I don't know Diana. She's beaten the others without much effect except for Kara. I don't think we should take her lightly. Izuku says, not feeling that confident about this. Diana just goes to him and pats his shoulder and looks at him. Do not worry, Izuku. I have a feeling that we will be victorious against this foul and show that we don't fear anything. Diana yells, confidence in her tone. Izuku just looks at her, really looking unsure about her words. He only sighs, knowing that this was the only way to deal with Livewire. Okay, Izuku says with a look of uncertain. He looks at the B-shaped clock hanging on the wall and saw it was getting late. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I've got to head home before my mom starts getting worried about me. He says, we need an edge in beating Livewire, but what? Izuku thought, jumping in the air. I know I can take the shock from her thanks to the many times Kaminari has discharged in class and in training, but I have limits to how much I can really take before I go down. What is it that I need that could help defeat Livewire? He thinks, trying to find a way in combating Livewire's attacks and get a hit on her. He jumps off a roof of a house and was nearing the subway as an idea appears in his mind. Wait, I know who can help me out with this. Izuku thought, thinking about who could help him in this. He lands onto a departing train and sits on the roof as he pulls out his phone. He opens the phone and goes straight to his contacts and looks for a number. He finds the number and realizes something. It would either morning back in Japan. So, that meant she had to be awake. Let's hope she'll pick up. Izuku says as he takes the chance and dials the number. He waits for the other line to be picked up and after a bit, it was. Hello, who is this? A voice asks on the other line, one that Izuku smiles from hearing it. What? Can't recognize your favorite costumer, Lab Rat's voice. Izuku asks in a joking tone. He hears the voice on the line gasp a bit. Muscles, is that you? Izuku lets out a small chuckle. Yeah, Hatsum. It's me. How are you? Izuku asks. Oh, it's been too long since I've last heard from you. How are you and how's the States doing for ya? The voice, now known to be as Mei Hatsum, asks. Haha, I'm fine, Hatsum. The US is alright, met some pretty interesting people and made a few friends as well. Izuku says, smiling a bit. He looks up and sees an electronic billboard the train was passing by and sees Livewire's call-out adverting on it. His smile drops and he gains a serious Hatsum. I need to ask you a favor. Sure, what's up? How fast can you make a suit and fly it over to Metropolis? Izuku asks. He hears Hatsum hums, assuming that she could be thinking. In a day if I use baby number 5207 and send the suit with baby number 7620. Why? What you need? No, I need one, and a few other things. Izuku says. Okay, what do you have in mind for this suit? Something that can combat and withstand electricity. Do you have anything that can do the thing? Izuku asks. Let me think. Of course I do. Glad to hear that. Now, let's discuss the suit. Izuku says, as he lies down on the train's roof and starts talking about the suit. The next night. Time, 11:58 p.m. Location, Glenmorgan Square, Central District, Metropolis, Delaware, USA. It was the next night and at Glenmorgan Square, it was packed to say the least. Thousands of fans were filling the street in anticipation for this call-out. In an alleyway behind the crowd, the girls of Young Justice peek out, seeing the large crowd gathered as the ones who were humiliated looked rather scared and nervous, something that, sisters, why so frightened when so many have come to see our triumph? Wonder Woman asks, the others look at her. We're not frightened. It's just ... they haven't come to see us to triumph. Green Lantern says, trying to hide herself. They came to see her make fools out of us again. Batgirl says, hiding behind Supergirl. Wonder Woman just wave at them. Nonsense, sisters, this is the moment for us to show that we are not afraid for this villain and show that we are strong as ever. Wonder Woman says. They look back to the crowd as one of the girls realizes something. Has anyone seen Izuku? Bumblebee asks. Her question causes everyone to look and see the only male in their team wasn't there. No, he wasn't at his home when we had to leave. Supergirl says. I wonder where could he be? Satana says, and she wasn't the only one wondering where their male friend was. With Izuku. Izuku was on top of a building not too far from Glenmorgan Square, where he was nervously tapping his foot on the floor while looking at the time on his phone. He saw that he had only 1 minute left before the call-out starts. Come on, May. I'm almost out of time. Izuku mutters, feeling nervous that he was going to be late. He suddenly hears a loud bang above him. Looking up, he spots an aircraft flying at high speed above him, and as it flies lower and right to the building, the craft shoots out something from the underside and it lands onto the building in front of Izuku with dust filling the area. Once the dust clears away, Izuku looks at what had landed and sees a metal pod in front of him. He walks to the pod and looks at it, seeing it was high-detailed. Suddenly his phone starts ringing, causing him to take it out and see it was Hatsum calling. "Hello," Izuku says as he answers the call. "Did the package arrive? My scanner says it landed at the location you said." "Yeah, it just did," Izuku says as he hears Mei let out a sigh of relief. "Oh, thank goodness. I thought it shorted out and crashed in the ocean again. Sorry for the delay, muscles. Air traffic was a hassle to get by," Mei says with Izuku laughing a little. "I can only imagine," Izuku says. He stops laughing and looks at the pod. "Is the suit in this pod?" "Yep, and the extra gear you asked for. It was really a challenge to weave in the RBB to a normal bodysuit like yours while trying to make it durable. But I love me a challenge and I have to say, I conquered it. Thanks, Mei. I own you big time," Izuku says, hearing Mei chuckle. "Yeah, you do. Now, I put only 2 rods there. That was the best I could do with the deadline I got. But I think they'll work. And remember, the suit can take so much electricity. You're not fully impervious to electricity, but you withstand most shock. Just don't go past that amount or you'll be in a world of pain you've been in before," Mei says with Izuku nodding. "Okay, I understand," Izuku says. He looks at the suit and the gear inside the pod. "Be careful in this fight and good luck. Send me reports on the suit for me when you can," Mei says with sincerity as Izuku smiles. "Will do," Izuku says right as he drops the call. He turns to the suit and process to take it from the pod and starts putting it on. Back at Glen Morgan Square, the large screens all over the square light up into a countdown, and once it hits 0, Livewire appears on the screens. "What up, Metropolis?" Livewire yells as she zips from the screens onto the stage. "You ready for the prank night of the century?" she yells, with the crowd cheering along. So, you might be wonder what Livewire has in store for her dedicated Chocoteers. Well, how about we start things off with the queen of mean memes, with some mean memes. Livewire says, pointing to the large screen behind as it shows the image of Supergirl's loss against her, making the crowd whisper amongst themselves while the girls watch on. That could explain her recycled outfit. Livewire says, causing the crowd to laugh as Supergirl just looks down in shame and embarrassment. The image on the screen changes to Batgirl, with tears in her eyes as she ran from her possessed moped. "Ha, I guess Batgirl still needs her training wheels," Livewire says, with the crowd laughing along as Batgirl just watches in horror before hiding her tearful face with her cape. The image changes again to Green Lantern, who was on the floor with her butt in the air, knocked out. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've found another cause for greenhouse gases," Livewire yells. The crowd laugh as Green Lantern just blushes while placing her hands to her mouth. The image changes again to Zatanna with her hair frizzled out. "Who wore it better, Zatanna or Porcupines?" Livewire asks with a grin. The crowd laughs harder as the magician watches in horror with her jaw dropping. The screen changes one last time to show the video of Bumblebee dancing against her will. And it looks like bees can't dance. Hehehe. Livewire laughs with the crowd. Bumblebee starts to cry as she shrinks herself and hides in a trash can. But wait, there are 2 missing from this fray. Where are the heroes known as Wonder Whiner and Lameku? Did they have the guts to show up tonight? Come on out, heroes, and face what's coming to ya. Livewire shouts, "Come on out, come on out, come on out." The crowd starts to chant as Wonder Woman and the others hear the chant. "Come, sisters, our enemy awaits." Wonder Woman yells as she emerges from the alley and was about to charge to the stage, but she notices that the others hadn't exited the alleyway. She looks into it and sees the others just stand there, hiding in the shadows and looking scared. "Sisters, you hesitant?" She asks. "We can't go out there, not after all that." Batgirl says, "Sisters, listen to me. I know that you'd be humiliated and the mankind has shamed you for it, but they do not know better. You must believe in them and their humanity. They are God, and they would not laugh at one when faced with true suffering." Wonder Woman says, trying to reach her friends back, saw that they just stood there, looking down to themselves. Seeing as her words did nothing, Wonder Woman gains an enraged expression and starts walking forward on the street into the crowd. The crowd parts way, letting the Amazonian warrior pass through as they laugh at her, but she ignores the laughter and just glares at what was in front of her. Livewire. The villain sees her and smirks. "Hey, look who here." Livewire says as she sees Wonder Woman stop just a few feet from the stage. She looks around and noticed that was a lack of green. "Where's your little boyfriend? Did he get scared and hid in his little hole?" she asks as the crowd laughs. Wonder Woman's glare intensifies as she pulls out her sword. "Livewire, your reign of cruelty and humiliation has reached its end. Stand down and face justice." Wonder Woman yells, spinning her blade and points it at the villain, who just adopts a thinking pose. "No, I'm good at where I'm at. And as for my reign, I think that it's just begun," Livewire says, smirking at Wonder Woman, who didn't find this funny. She leaps into the air, holding her sword with both hands as she was going for a slash attack with it, but Livewire wasn't intimidated by this as she sends an electric blow embrace at Wonder Woman, shocking her, which causes her to release her sword and crash into the stage, causing the crowd who were just watching and record the fight to laugh. Diana recovers from the shock and stands up, shaking her head. She sees Livewire right beside her, smirking as she charges toward the villain and starts to throw punches and kicks at her, but Livewire proved that was a fruitless effort, as Livewire just zapped left and right on the stage, while using the zapping to send more electricity attacks to the Amazon. These attacks were effective as she was starting to move slower with each miss of her attacks to the point where she could barely stand, and in seeing that she was in this state, Livewire capitalizes on this moment and forces a large arc of electricity at Wonder Woman, electrocuting her while lifting her in the air. "See that, Blinder Woman? The people love me. You hear that?" Livewire asks as she points to the crowd as they all laugh. "You hear them laugh. Laughing at you. You're just a joke to them, something for their entertainment, and that's all you're to them. But don't worry, this will all be over soon. Once we just to the punchline." She yells. She quickly drains all the power from the stage lights and uses it to further electrocuting Diana, causing her to scream in pure agony. The crowd continue laughing for a bit before they notice Wonder Woman's screams, and they look and see she was in utter pain from the electrocution. This causes them to feel bad and concerned for her. The others listen to the screams. They were about to go out and help her when they saw something leap in the air in front of them, prompting them to look. Livewire continues to shock Wonder Woman with electricity until she blasts her with it, sending her flying back and crashing into the street in the crowd, causing said crowd to part ways as she skids and creates a large trench onto the asphalt before coming to a halt. The crowd look at the downed heroine, seeing her twitch involuntarily as arcs of electricity surges off her body. They were frightened at seeing the proud heroine defeated as Livewire laughs. She moves toward the front of the stage and stares at Wonder Woman's body as she grins viciously, and lifts her hand in the air, draining the remaining power from the stage and creating a large of electricity. "Night nighty, Wonder Loser." Livewire shouts and fires the large of electricity to the downed heroine, but just before it could hit it, a black rod intercepts the attack in front of Wonder Woman and absorbs the whole attack, saving her and those around her as the rod lands to the ground. Livewire sees this and was confused. "What the?" Livewire could only say before. St. Louis Smash Air Force. She turns just in time to be hit by a large blast of compressed air, sending her crashing into the stage and creating a large hole into it. Livewire slowly emerges from the hole, dazed from it as she shakes her head and looks around. "Who did that?" Livewire demeans, wanting to know who struck her. "That would be me." Everyone hears a cold voice yelling. They all look up to a building nearby and see someone standing on top of it, glowing. This figure descends from the building and onto the street, landing in front of Wonder Woman. "Why not pick on someone your own size?" this figure says. A spotlight from the stage shines onto the figure and shows as it was Deku, in a new suit. The suit was different from his other suits as the color scheme of it was black with the outlines being teal-green, and had teal-green sneakers and black soles. He also had black arm braces with teal-green lines on them. He had the same black extended knee pads as most of the others had on, but his had green bolts, and the last major difference to his outfit were his gloves. His gloves were black, just like the entire suit was, with green palms and gray sights attached to each of the knuckles. They also featured a dual-layered band around the wrist decorated with a teal-green seam. He had his mask on, but the eye holes had green lenses which were glowing, and his respirator was now black with teal-green lines on it. He had 2 gray straps and had 1 black rod attached on his back thanks to the straps. Wonder Woman slowly regained consciousness and looks to see Deku in front of her. "Izuku." Diana whispers, happy to see her friend. "Oh, look who decided to show up. The Green Blinder." Livewire growls, standing up as she sees the new suit. "And it looks like you got a makeover. What's with the get-up? Afraid that I'll embarrasses you like I did to your buddies?" she asks, mocking the others and Wonder Woman, which angers Deku. "Just something I got that to use to deal with a mean beach like you," Deku says, catching everyone by surprise at his swear while Livewire looks at him with an enraged expression. "What did you just call me?" Livewire asks, electricity starting to violently surge off and around her body as Deku just grabs the rod from his pack while grabbing the other rod off from the ground, as he cracks his neck as he glares at her. The lens is moving with his eye movements. "You heard me. A BITC, with a capital H beach." Deku yells, "This did it for Livewire. That's it. You're so going to regret calling me that." Livewire shouts, shooting a large arc of electricity to the Japanese boy. Deku doesn't flinch at the oncoming attack as he throws one of the rods at the attack, with it hitting the attack and absorbing the electricity as he leaps in the air, and was above the villain. He throws the second rod at her, which Livewire sees and simply turns into electricity, and lets it pass through her, not noticing the rod had absorbed some of her energy while passing through her. When the rod goes through her, she turns back to her human self, but she didn't expect Deku to land right next to her and strike her with the St. Louis smash across the side of her head, sending her flying into the large stage on stage and destroying it as it shocks her for a bit before flying back to the floor. Livewire groans and was surprised at the fact he kicked her, when it should be impossible to do so. That hurts that hurts. How did you? Livewire mutters, trying to find the right words as Deku goes and picks up the rod on stage and looks at her as he hurt her. What? Did you really think I wouldn't come prepared to face you? Deku says, getting into his stance while activating full howling, his green bioelectricity dancing around him. Livewire grit her teeth and stares at Deku with anger as her lighting violently dances around her. You little bug. Livewire yells, getting up and charges toward Deku, with him doing the same as they meet in the middle of the stage as they engage in an intense battle. Green and blue lighting surges through the air and on the floor as Livewire and Deku were throwing attacks, jabs, punches and kicks onto one another, but both weren't backing down. Deku's suit was handling pretty well from the shocks and attacks, but he could still feel them, and he knew that the suit would eventually hit its limit. He strikes Livewire with his rod across the face, sending her stumbling back a bit as she was a bit dizzy as he rushes at her, and hits her with a 5% Detroit smash, causing her to fly back to the back of the stage where she bounces off the floor a bit before coming to a halt as she stands up and glares at her opponent. Go and die. Livewire yells, pointing her hands at Deku, and fires 2 blasts of electricity at him. Deku responds by lifting and aiming both of his hands at the attack as the gloves band open out. Double Delaware Smash Air Force. Izuku FS all 10 of his fingers, shooting out a barrage of compressed air to the attack as both attacks collide and explode on impact, nullifying both as dust and debris filled the now wrecked stage. As the dust and debris starts to clear, Deku decides to speak what was on his mind. Do you know what you really are? A self-centered, egotistical sociopath who enjoys hurt others for her own amusement and gain. Deku says as everyone listens in, with Livewire listening too. Shut up. Livewire mutters. You're someone who twists others' minds into her own, to laugh at others' misfortune or suffers as if it's a FC King joke. Deku says, which causes Livewire to start gritting her teeth. Shut up. Livewire mutters again, but a bit louder. Electricity was surging from her again slowly. The dust finally clears and Deku looks at her with his lenses narrowing at her, as if he was glaring. You're someone who uses their powers to hurt people weaker than them, either just to feel like they're the top dog on the yard or to feel better about themselves since they know perfectly that they're weak. To feel better for their own insecurities. I know all about people like you, because I was a victim as well. But just what? I'm not letting that happen again. Deku roars, rushing forward to Livewire, who just looks up at him with her eyes dilated and shaking with rage. Shut up. Livewire yells, standing up and firing a large amount of electricity to Deku, who still runs toward her. Just as the attack was about to hit him, in slow motion, Deku tosses the rod at the attack, causing all the electric attack to be drawn to the rod as it absorbs it as he leaps over the rod and rushes to the stunned Livewire. And once he reaches her before she could react, he attacks her with his latest move. 15% San Francisco Smash. Deku yells as he performs a perfect textbook backflip, but in midair, sticks his right foot out and uses it to hit Livewire square on her chin, and sends her flying back and crashing into the back of the stage strong. Deku lands perfectly back onto his feet and looks at the villain, who was slowly getting up while rubbing her jaw. Stay down, Livewire. You can't win this. It's over. He yells, still on guard in case she would do something. Livewire spits out some BLD from the kick and glares at Deku, but her glaze shifts to the crowd behind him. Let's see if you still think that after I've fried them. Livewire yells as she shoots a blast of electricity, but not at Deku but to the crowd as it passes the hero, who sees what she was doing. No, Deku shouts. He turns and starts running to the attack, but he saw that he wasn't fast enough to intercept it or get the rod in time to throw it in front of the crowd. Just as the crowd sees the attack coming to them and seeing that they had no time to dodge, they prepare for the worst when suddenly Wonder Woman shoots up and leaps in front of the crowd and uses her bracelets in tanking the blast, sending her back a bit with her feet digging into the ground, creating a trench. Once the attack had dissipated, Wonder Woman, injured and exhausted, stands up and looks at the stage and glares at Livewire. I think not. Wonder Woman yells. Deku was surprised in seeing Diana up but was happy that she was alright. Injured but alright. The same could not be said for Livewire. What? You're still standing. Livewire shouts, surprised and frustrated in seeing Wonder Woman up. But that changes to a scoff. Oh, well, just I have to up the ante and fry you instead. She yells, sending again blast of electricity to the Amazon warrior. Wonder Woman crosses her arms and readies herself of the blast when a blue and red blur appears in front of her and tanks the attack instead. Wonder Woman looks and sees it was Supergirl. Wonder Woman and Deku yells, happy to see their friend there. What? You're here too? Livewire yells, now finding this to be ridiculous. And she's not the only one. A voice shouts and Green Lantern, Satana, Batgirl and Bumblebee join Supergirl and Wonder Woman, all ready to take this villain down. Deku smiles under his mask as he grabs his rods and joins his team once more. Livewire was now livid. What? Livewire shouts, couldn't believe that this was happening. The young heroes just look at her with dis. See this live wire? This is something you could never break. You were close in doing so. Break our spirits, but if one of us remains strong, then we'll follow them. This is our strength. This is our bond. This is our team. Wonder Woman shouts, standing tall with her teammates as all look at Livewire with determination. Livewire grit her teeth further as she starts to float off the ground while draining the power from the buildings, screens and adverting from the square. Oh yeah. Well, let's see how strong that so-called nod really is after I do my strongest attack. Livewire yells, firing all the power she had within her at the heroes. They stood ready and took on the attack with Wonder Woman using her bracelets, Supergirl just bracing the attack, Green Lantern using a tire and shield construct, Zatanna using a magical portal, Bumblebee using her suit to absorb the attack, Deku doing the same with his rods while Batgirl uses a kite and key to redirect the sum of the attack. Seeing as her attack wasn't doing any damage to the heroes, Livewire decides to draw all the power from the city, causing her to light up in a violent charge of blue and azure. She smirks before releasing all that energy to the young heroes, cueing them to brace for it as a large flash and explosion rocks not just the city but the surrounding areas or metropolis. Glenmorgan Square looked like a war zone, windows on the buildings destroyed, the screen all over the square broken or short out and the stage, a burning rubble. Crazed laughter was heard echoing in the square as the dust starts to clear and Livewire was seen, back to her normal state, standing in front of the burning stage as she laughs. Hey ha, see that? That's what you get when you mess with Livewire. Hey ha. Livewire continues to laugh at her victory, but she quickly notices that she was the only one laughing. She looks around and sees the crowd were just looking at her with horrified expressions. What? Why aren't you laughing? That was comedy gold. I won. You should be applauding me, cheering for me. Why aren't you doing it? She yells. Because they are not like you they never were. A voice spoke in the dust from where Young Justice stood. Everyone turns to the location and see as the dust clears away, see Young Justice, still standing but were all injured as their outfits were torn or broken, and had injuries, burns across various parts of their bodies. Deku's mask had been ripped, allowing his eye to be seen a bit of his hair, but thanks to the lights not working, his hair was dark. You're still standing. Livewire yells. She couldn't believe that they were still standing after that attack. But her shock changes as she sees they were barely able to stand on their own. Doesn't matter really, I can change that with a little jolt, she says, lifting her hands to the heroes and smirks, ready to blast them with her electricity, but nothing came from her hands. The only thing that came out was sparks. Huh, Livewire uttered, as she looking at her hands, confused on what was happening. The heroes saw what had happened and they realized something. Oh, what's the matter? All out of juice? Supergirl asks, with a smirk as Livewire glares at her. No, I just need to get more power and then I can fry you all. Livewire yells. She lifts her hands up in the air and tries. Looks like you took all the power the city had to end us, but even that couldn't finish us off. Guess UW. Shut up. I can do it. Livewire yells, trying harder and drawing any energy from the buildings, but still nothing came. The crowd slowly emerge from their various hiding spots and see what she was doing and start to laugh at her. Stop laughing at. See that, Livewire, no one is like you. As I said before, no one is like you or think as you. All of this was for attention, and once people has seen your true colors, all that attention is gone. Deku says. He stands up straight and looks at Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, would you like to do the please? He says as he hands her one of the rods. The Amazon looks at the weapon and grins. Why yes, I would. Wonder Woman says. She takes the rod and spins it while turning to Livewire, whose eyes widen in fright at seeing Wonder Woman holding the rod. And now, wait. Hold on. Livewire stutters. She was trying to turn her back into electricity and escape the area, but she found that she couldn't, due to the lack of energy in her. Wonder Woman starts walking toward Livewire, beating the rod into her hand while grinning, as Livewire starts walking backwards away from her, looking rather scared until she hits the burning debris that was the stage. She looks at Wonder Woman, who was towering over her. Please don't. Livewire could only whispers, hoping that Diana could have mercy for her. But, I think not. For you should pay for what you've done to my sisters and champion. Wonder Woman yells before she swings the rod at Livewire and hits her, sending the electric villain flying through the night sky as she screams. I won't forget this, Young Justice. I quote, I'll be back. Those were Livewire's final words as she disappears over the city skyline. Wonder Woman's leg starts to wobble a bit as she drops the rod before they finally give out, and she starts to fall to the floor, but before she hits the ground, she was caught by Deku, who held her, even when he could barely stand as well. Are you okay, Diana? Izuku whispers to Diana, looking at her with a concerned expression. Diana looks up at him and smiles. I am all right, Izuku. Thank you for coming and assisting us in defeating Livewire. You were really brave against her. Diana whispers, as Izuku just chuckles slightly. It was no problem. I could say the same for you. Izuku whispers, shifting Diana so that she could lean onto him as support while the others join them. That was amazing, you too. Batgirl shouts as she smiles brightly. Her mask was torn in half with some of her hair being exposed. Man, did we kick that beach's butt. Supergirl yells, fist pumping. Why yeah, we sure did. Bumblebee. Love the new outfit Deku. Made it yourself? Satana asks, looking at the now damaged outfit as Deku just chuckles and rubs the back of his head. Thanks. No, I did. I had a friend make it for me, Deku says. And, at that moment, the crowd starts cheering for our young heroes, for their victory, which catches them off guard. While they were a bit ticked from the crowd laughing and shaming them for what happened earlier, they understood that they didn't know any better as they were sheep, following their shepherd. So, they decide to put that behind them and just wave at the crowd, enjoying this moment. In the crowd was Lois Lane, who came to the square to see if the fight was newsworthy, which wasn't, but thankfully, she just found something that was. Now, this is front page news. Lois yells, holding out her camera to the heroes and takes a picture of them. Time skip, 1 day later. Shocker at Glen Morgan Square. Young Justice saved the night while Bully gets her comings. We see Leslie in her room reading the Daily Planet with the headline being that of last night's events, and Young Justice's victory over Livewire, which PSS her off, causing her to crumble the newspaper up and tossing it across her room. Whatever, once I get my Shocketeers to rally up, we'll. She says as she turns to her computer to go to her channel and get her followers to rally against this when she sees something terrible. What? My Shocketeers? Where are they going? Leslie yells, standing up from her seat as she sees the number of her followers were rapidly dropping down from 100,000 to 0. Wondering what was going on, she scrolls down to the latest video and saw nasty comments on the comment section. After seeing most of the comments were aimed at Livewire and her actions last night, she spots one particular comment. See here for an even better sight. She says she looks at the comment and saw there was a link attached to it. Curious on what the link could be, she sees yes on it with it taking her to a new site. And what she saw utterly shocked her. Seriously? Leslie loudly shouts after seeing a whole site dedicated to Young Justice, and Katz's various pictures were on the site with the members of the team, playing or hugging some kitties. Leslie was, to say the least, angry at this.